Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for coming. It's April 18th, 2024. It is not 7:30 p.m. It's shortly after here in the Pacific Northwest. My name is Samantha, and I've got with me as usual, Kalia.
Hello, welcome in everybody.
And we
See
are
y'all.
Missing Pacific Northwest Crimes Revisited. And tonight's live is Kyron Horman's War Room. Let me take a look at the comments real quick and say hello to everybody. Hello, Kim. Thank you for being here. EM Embers, nice to see you. I don't think I've ever seen you here before.
Yes, welcome.
Everybody, welcome. Thank you guys all for joining and being here tonight. It is a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest. The sun's been out this last week. It looks like spring. I'm super excited that the sun's been shining. And like you were saying, Kaylee, about the kids being a little bit off schedule because the sun's staying out so late.
Oh yeah, they're loving it. It's great. I love this time of year. I think everybody can relate to that. I describe it as the ice cube is melting and I can see the sun. It's so great. Yes.
Yeah, I love the sun. It just means so many fun things to do around here. All right. Well, so Kyron Horman's War Room. That's what the room was called, that kept all of Kyron's case files and evidence, tips, and all of that good stuff in it at the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office.
Binders and binders full of information. And it really is, seriously, Kyron's case has been dubbed. Sorry if you hear my kids in the background, by the way. I hear them kind of having a little bit of fun up there. But anyways, Kyron's case has been always called the biggest search and rescue as well as criminal investigation in Oregon's history. And there is definitely a reason for that. As you'll see here, Samantha has put in a lot of awesome research for us to go over. And I don't know if anybody's here from Facebook. Welcome from Facebook. But I even included a little question. Did anybody know that Terri wasn't the only person that they looked into? I mean, this was the largest investigation in the whole Oregon history. So they weren't just looking at one person in that case. They were looking in so many avenues, so many ways. So yes, this is going to be a great live. The War Room, I mean, that's nicknamed that for a reason, right? So yeah, can't wait
Hello,
to get into it.
Barbecue. Thank you for joining. So a long talk with the lead investigator, Detective Taber, is what prompted this live. Yeah, it was I was just very concerned after talking with him. And I'm concerned that because he's concerned that the public did think in the beginning and still do think somewhat that the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office was or is hyper focused on Terri Horman. And we just had to deep dive. We had to look to try to find as much information as we possibly could to show everybody, to show the world what law enforcement actually did, to investigate
a lot of
Kyron's disappearance.
A lot of people came together. Volunteers, paid workers, people from all over the country. This was huge. So the amount of people involved and resources involved is bigger than any of us can really comprehend, I truly believe.
Yeah, leads that were followed, tips that are still coming in, what resources they've used, and the different law enforcement agencies that have been involved and that are still involved in Kyron's disappearance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot. And it's honestly, it's still, I know a lot of people will relate to what I'm about to say. It's great to hear that they've done so much looking and, they've been looking and looking. They haven't given up on Kyron. It's not a cold case, but we all share that frustration that we just, they haven't had that one evidence, or they haven't found Kyron, the things that they need to make sure that the people that did this to him are put away, you know, and that's the one frustrating thing. And we can only hope that that piece of evidence comes to light one day as they continue to investigate, because we know it's not a cold case. Tips come into our Facebook page sometimes, you know, privately through messages that we might pass along to the detectives. So yeah, people are still out there looking for Kyron and still, you know, wanting him to come home. It's just like, he stole all of our
Detective Taber said during the phone call that they still get tips from all around the world. Even though it's a local investigation, they are still getting tips from all over the world.
I believe that 100%. Yep.
And yeah, like I was saying, it was so disheartening to hear Detective Taber talk about this hyper-focused and stuff, because, you know, there was a time that the public was wondering why the detectives were over on Sauvie Island putting in so much work over there for such a long time. And we'll get into reasons for that later. But yeah, this is going to be a great live. We are super excited to bring this information to you guys. This live is dedicated to all of the law enforcement agencies and Multnomah County Sheriff's Office for doing an amazing job and looking for Kyron Horman, for never giving up, and always being there for the parents, supporting them, and, you know, doing the hard work.
Absolutely.
So we had an idea too. We're always putting up a lot of our information, all of our news articles and stuff, and we read them. Tonight's going to be a little bit different. I made a super long video. I'm going to play it. It's going to show everybody a perspective while me and Kaylee go over the information, so that everybody's not sitting around bored just looking at what we're reading. Everything that we use in our lives are always posted in the community. They're always posted up in Kyron Horman Case Revisited on our Facebook group. So if you really want to look at the information, if you want the link, you want the article, you can always go to those places to see it. But yeah, all of the information is verified. Everything we're going to read is what it is. And yeah, let's just hop right into this. First, I just want to start with Daren Taber. He is the lead investigator on this case. He has been on this case now for, I think, like the last, I want to say 3 years. It could be shorter. It could be a little bit longer. It was really nice to find him on LinkedIn because it gave us a bunch of information about him. This is the only thing that I'm showing before I show my video, but let me just pull them up real quick. Yeah, we're doing things a little bit different. We're keeping our information on our phones and just hope that the live will engage some more people with a video. So this is Detective Daren Taber. He is the detective at Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. He went to Columbia Southern University. Let's just see. This right here is about Daren. He is a career police officer. He has amassed over 2,200 certified training hours and extensive experience in law enforcement. Daren is currently assigned as a detective for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office Investigation Division. He investigates all personal crimes from child abuse and assaults to abductions and murders. His collateral duties include assignment to the major crimes team, on which he teams up on major cases with surrounding cooperative agencies. Just keep in mind the major crime team, because we're going to talk about what the major crime team actually is. His law enforcement experience includes patrol operations, supervision, instruction, SWAT operations, crisis intervention team, gang enforcement, and criminal investigations. His law enforcement instructor and trainer certifications include defensive tactics instructor, ground defense, fighting instructor, building search instructor, active shooter response instructor, field training officer, armorer on a Glock and a Colt, and a taser instructor. Needless to say that Daren is pretty bad ASS. Just gonna say. Maloney County Sheriff's Office for 8 years, 10 months. He's been a detective, a threat assessor, deputy sheriff. What is a PREA investigator? Police recruit something, I would say.
PREA investigator.
Westside Community Resource Officer.
Oh, it is Prison RAPE Elimination Act. So it's a SA investigator.
Got it.
For that setting. I never heard of that before, but good.
Me
That's,
either.
Interesting and great for him.
Hey Ray. Hey Miss Barbecue. That's my sister right there, Miss Barbecue. Amy from Boston, in Boston. She's here. Nice to see you. Nice to see everybody here. We're talking about Daren Taber. He is the lead investigator in Kyron Horman's case. We are doing a live tonight on the War Room. It was literally named the War Room in Kyron Horman's investigation. He's also a member association of threat assessment professionals, February. Well, we're not going to go through dates. Let's see. Troutdale Police Department, police officer, AIC sergeant, vice president. He is a graduate from Columbia Southern University. Fairview Police Department. His skills: law enforcement, criminal investigations, patrol, crime prevention, evidence, criminal justice, interrogation, firearms, investigation, public safety, surveillance, field training, community policing, police training, cybercrime, homicide investigator, criminal intelligence, taser. We went over more of those. And he also has a Medal of Valor for being one out of 16 people that went in during the shooting over in Oregon. I believe it was in 2014 or 2015. So like I'm saying, like, Detective Taber is pretty bad ASS. He really is. We are glad that he is on Kyron's case. He's a terrific man. I love my conversations with him, my emails with him. He works hard for Kyron. This isn't just a 9 to 5 to him. He literally takes Kyron home. He has a court board at home that he puts all of Kyron's stuff up on at his house. He has children that he's raising, and he lives in that community. So this really touched home for him.
Yeah.
He was not one of the investigators.
No.
That was originally assigned.
Right. So, that's important to point out because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And one of them is that, like Samantha mentioned, that they have had tunnel vision. This detective is completely unassociated with the original people who ran this investigation. He was at a different police department, and it looked like he was only been with Multnomah County for 8 years and some months. And it's just crazy to think that so many people contributed to this investigation, and to act at the end of the day come out and say that nobody stopped any sort of corruption in Kyron's case, or tunnel vision, because there were so many people helping. It just feels like there would have been people like that, stand up people like Daren Taber that, would, I don't know. Just long story short, I just think that is just something important to point out. He's 8 years with Multnomah County, and we really appreciate his dedication to Kyron in the last few years. It's an active case.
You can tell when you talk to him how invested he is. I mean, that's why we're doing the show. because I was so concerned about the way he was talking. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. We owe it to you. We owe it to all law enforcement agencies that were involved and still are involved in this search to dedicate something to them and show them our appreciation for doing such hard work. This right here is a picture of the war room. This shelf has got, I mean, you can see 3 shelves, but this thing's like 5 or 6 shelves high. These are 4-inch binders full of information. And what he told me this last week was also like, what? Because we research so much and we think, oh yeah, we were on to something, whatever. Get this. So he tells me, he was like, I get a little frustrated when I see everybody doing what they're doing. I wish I could help because, we're not privy to any information whatsoever. And he was like, sometimes I just want to scream. Sometimes I just want to say something and I can't share the information. He goes, because there's tens of thousands of files. And what we post about, what we talk about is less than a tenth, he said, of what they actually have as far as evidence, tips, leads, and what's in this war room. A tenth out of tens of thousands.
It's just hard to imagine, right? I believe it wholeheartedly because look at what we're looking at right now, and we only know what we know. But yeah, I definitely it's hard to wrap your head around. And yeah, I do appreciate that because what he said, because, it is true. Your human nature is to just want to be able to be. Yeah, that's a hard position to be in. I wouldn't want to be in that position.
And like Bigfoot Barbecue is saying right here, because I felt this way. Like the sad part is we all thought this was going to be an open and shut back in the day. I remember talking to this years ago with Samantha.
Yeah.
This is my brother-in-law here because it was just something to talk about. And I have always, I live around here, so we really heard about it. It was all over the news. I've been obsessed with him since he became missing. I've always talked about Kyron. And that's what's led me to where I'm at today. But we really did think it was going to be so open and shut. We really thought that this, there was enough and something was going to happen, and it didn't.
Right. I hear that all the time that, I expected it to be over so soon. And then it just he kept hearing his name. He's still missing. He's still missing. It's like, what? He's still missing? It's hard to believe. And it's just because, again, I don't know if there are any statistics included, but the statistics of a stranger to stranger abduction are so minuscule. Yeah. So this shook their community, obviously. It shook the whole world. I don't even need to say that. It's just,
the whole
I can't imagine being there, though, at ground zero. And, look at Jason Gates right there, he's wiping a tear. This had a profound impact that rippled and still ripples almost 14 years later. It just, I'm glad we're here talking about it. Thank you to the viewers. Thank you to the people who are playing on replay, because this is important to talk about still. He's still missing. We still need to talk about it. He still needs to be found. He still needs justice. It's so hard.
So, and I've had a hard time since I talked to him. You know that, Kaylee. I have been like, whoa.
Heavy on your heart. You're right.
Yeah, it is really super heavy on. It's just, it was really crazy to hear him be upset about that. So, the thing you also need to know is there's people that talk like, why isn't FBI still involved? Well, FBI is still involved. Why isn't the Portland Police Department involved? Well, they are. And nobody better than the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office could have been better, just the best people to have, because Multnomah County Sheriff's Office is a search and rescue unit. In itself, it is a volunteer organization whose objective is to save the community by searching and for rescuing lost and injured persons in wilderness and urban areas, assist with evacuations during emergencies, assisting law enforcement with evidence searches, and educating the public. And They have participated in well over 1,500 missions in the wilderness for missing, injured, and deceased persons with criminal evidence searches. As a search and rescue organization, they are called to perform 4 different types of searches: trail searches, open grid searches. Keep that in mind too, open grid searches, because they use grid searches to look for Kyron and the way that they set up these maps. And we'll be talking about that and a lot of other stuff. Closed grid searches and evidence searches, trail and grid searches for missing persons. May occur any time of the day, any day of the year, in any weather condition. And we live in the Pacific Northwest. We never know what our weather's going to be like. It can be rainy. It can be sunny. It can be freezing cold. It can be super hot. It can be foggy. It can, it can be anything here, okay? And it can change from day to day, literally from day to day. These often require a quick response by teams or trained and well-equipped searches. Evidence searches involve a thorough examination of an area currently under investigation by law enforcement. MCSO, which is Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. You guys are going to hear us say MCSO. That's what that means. SAR is known throughout the Pacific Northwest, okay? As an able and effective evidence searching team, often responsible for recovering critical evidence pieces. So that tells you a little bit about Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, what they do. And
yeah, what they were up, what, why a lot of people also, question why didn't Portland police take over? And I think it defaulted to Multnomah County just because of the precedent of the situation and the fact that they were the search and rescue office, and they were such a rural area. It was in the perfect hands of Multnomah County, and they have searched and searched and searched for this boy. I believe that they think
even though they didn't take over, even though they didn't take over, though, they are still involved and have been involved, Portland police, since the very beginning. You guys are going to find out how many people are involved in this and go, what?
Yeah.
And we're still sitting here. It's kind of irritating, but at the same time, it's kind of not, because they just want to have all their ducks in the row. They want to make sure that when they prosecute, that it's going to stick. That's what this is all about.
You know what? I looked into it, and the book Boy Missing, The Search for Kyron Horman by Rebecca Morris, that has a lot of information by an expert who studies no-body homicide trials. And I looked into what his research was, and then I tried to confirm it, and it seems to match up. Oregon has only had 2 no-body homicide trials ever. And one of them was, he was let out on appeal. So 50-50. And guess what? Multnomah County specifically really, really doesn't like to go to trial for homicide or violent crimes. They try to get plea deals from their victims. This just came out in a investigation by Coin News, that they try to get convictions by doing a plea bargain with the criminals, so that way they can secure a conviction instead of risking it by going to a trial and having that risk. And that is a long-standing trend in the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. So honestly, this is a perfect storm of a horrible tragedy. That's why I really do, it feels like, there's hope with this new DA, because he did take the time to mention on when he had a speech, he did mention that being dedicated to Kyron and hearing Kyron's supporters, which is pretty awesome that he even took the time to mention it, because you can't say the same for the current sitting DA, who lied on camera about denying, or Desiree denying a meeting with him when she's been asking for a meeting with him. He lied about it and said that she's the one who turned him down. So it's just like, wow, I really, really hope that the future is better for Kyron, because, man, it has been a long 14 years, I'm sure, for his family. And we all want to see justice.
Wow. And then the current DA also, our other moderator in our Facebook group, looked and did a bunch of research, and she found out that the current DA has not convicted anybody for murder or for RAPE at
Yeah,
all
right.
since he's been
None.
DA. None.
Yeah. And
Absolutely
he has a
zero.
really
Zilch.
bad, notorious local record for being, I've been saying, lacking courage, to say it nicely. He doesn't convict. And a lot of people are unhappy with him. It's not just because of Kyron's case. It's because he is not convicting people. And that's one of the reasons why you hear him talk a lot about, oh, my conviction rates are up. But people say that those are looking at skewed timelines to make him look better. The reality is his convictions are down. And Heidi, our moderator, is a great researcher. And when she told us this information, I was shocked. I was like,
Yeah.
wow. And you know what? He came to be DA under special circumstances, even. I don't even think it was, if I remember correctly, I could be incorrect, but I think he was like given the role under special circumstances because of something. Like, I feel like maybe the acting DA retired, so the governor appointed him or something. He wasn't even voted in by the citizens, I believe. I could
Yeah,
be incorrect,
there was
but
something definitely with him coming into office. I can't remember what it was. We'll have
yeah,
to look into that a little bit more.
yeah,
So besides MCSO being, having that there are their own search and rescue unit, they also have within them what's called the Green Hornet. Now, the Green Hornet is a special kind of search and rescue team that they will put out when needed, when people go lost and stuff. I'm going to take this video down real quick. I want to show you guys the video of what Green Hornet does, and then we'll talk about it. We're also going to go over something that Dan Staton wrote.
If someone goes missing in the Columbia River Gorge and they call 911 requesting help,
911, what's your emergency?
a lot of things go into motion at that moment. Search and rescue efforts are then activated. Their cell phone will get pinged and we'll get a better location of where they're at. Then the search and rescue lead will call the on-call Green Hornets and request assistance. So when search and rescue is gearing up, it could take a few hours to get assets on the trail. The Green Hornet Hasty team is comprised of law enforcement members. Every team member has their packs ready and have take-home cars. We can get out there in 45 minutes or less. We have a higher probability of providing aid to injured people, locating missing people.
We have you at Northing.
And getting them back down to safety.
What I found really interesting in the Green Hornet is not only are they also bad ASS for real, they are running up these trails and everything else, but they also specialize in cellular data, which we all know is really important to this case.
mm-hmm.
Super important to this case. And yeah, the Green Hornets worked on Kyron Horman. They helped search. I barely came across this, by the way, and I've never heard about them in this whatsoever. Did you want to read what they wrote about?
Yes.
The Dan Staton, it's where the two circles are.
Okay, let me get that.
Two red circles.
All right.
It will start off, as you all know.
Okay.
That's the letter by Dan.
I found it. Got it here. Thank you very much. As you all know, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has been leading an expanded search for Kyron Horman, a 7-year-old student of Skyline Elementary School who disappeared from the school on Friday, June 4th. The search expanded from local search and rescue effort to a statewide response involving 18 Oregon counties and teams from Washington and California. Law enforcement and support assets from Oregon sheriffs, Local municipalities, state police, and the FBI have been involved in an ongoing investigation concurrent to the search and rescue operation. We are in day 20 of this search and rescue operation, and to date, Kyron has not been located and continues to be considered missing and endangered. We continue our search efforts in hope of returning Kyron safely to his family. This search has been particularly taxing on many members of our agency, not only those committed to the operational command post, investigation, support functions, and media and family liaisons, but also to our members devoted to ensuring core service functions. Despite the ever-increasing depletion of resources being committed to this ongoing search operation, MCSO staff continue to perform their duties, as always, in an exemplary manner. I want to thank each of you for your dedication and commitment to continuing to provide service to the Sheriff's Office core functions to our community during this strenuous time. Your service to this agency, this community, and our patrol districts, jails, courts, libraries, and rivers is vital to the public safety in Multnomah County and has not gone unnoticed. Once again, to all of our members, thank you.
That was Dan Statton's letter to Green Hornet and to all of the other members that have been involved in searching for Kyron. He was the sheriff in 2010. He had only been sheriff a little over a month, if that, when Kyron came up missing. So, I mean, he had to deal with the largest search for a missing person in Oregon's history and the largest criminal investigation, boom, right off the bat of being sheriff in Oregon. Could you imagine that stress?
Right. Yeah.
Hey, I'm sheriff now. Boom. Ooh, you're calling me to do my duties. I mean,
yeah, right off the bat, exactly.
It's
like,
insane.
dang. And yeah, he really, it just was crazy to see that not just him, but everybody just really, once they knew, they hit the ground running to try to find Kyron. And yeah, hard to imagine being so new to being under so much pressure, everybody looking to you.
Hello, Zane Lily. Thank you for being here. It's good to see you, hon. And I also saw somebody else that popped up here in chat earlier. Thank you for the engagement. Bigfoot Barbecue. Ju B, thank you for being here, love. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad you're here. So earlier I mentioned the major crime unit. And that is part of what Daren Taber, the lead investigator, is. I'm just going to read to you what it is and another little quotes here. Investigators are using advances in software, digital forensics, and geospatial technology and support and advance their work in collaboration with our major crime team partners, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office and the FBI. Detectives are pursuing all legitimate investigative leads and will continue to do so until Kyron is located. MCSO activated the East County Major Crimes Team. The East County Major Crimes Team consists of investigators from the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, Gresham Police Department, Port of Portland Police Department, Oregon State Police, and the Multnomah County District Attorney's office. The impact of MCSO in an immense providing corrections, civil, and public safety services to the most populous county in the state of Oregon. MCSO serves 4 contract cities: Fairview, Maywood Park, Troutdale, and Wood Village, and unincorporated areas such as Sauvie Island and the Columbia River Gorge, which is huge and very vast, and is responsible for keeping more than 100 miles of water safe. So this is Multnomah County's job, you guys. This huge area that they take care of, and their major crime teams that they work with are some of the largest counties in Oregon with a lot of population in these counties. So just want to keep talking about the people that were involved, the different kinds of investigative teams that were involved. Hello, Past. How are you? Thank you for coming. Zane Lilly says, I'm always listening while cooking and cleaning. I'm quiet, but I'm here. I do the same thing with lives these days all the time. I'm constantly listening in on everybody's lives.
Doing the dishes, listening to lives, editing videos, listening. That's what I do too.
So then let's talk. Let's see. Do I have a video? Let's show a video. Dan Stanton talking about the different investigative stuff he was doing. Real quick.
County, whose office has been leading this search, and Sheriff Tim Evinger of Klamath County. Good to have both of you with us, gentlemen.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Erica.
As we mentioned, 1 week now since little Kyron disappeared, and I understand that today you are really ramping up efforts in this search. What is it 1 week later that now has you putting on an extra push?
The extra push that we're moving into, Erica, is just a standard process that we use in our search and rescue efforts. We put 532 people on the ground from ground zero, working outward during the first phases of this to cover every inch of terrain in this area. We also employed our canine and our air support in this process. This is the next phase. We're going to be expanding that operation even further out. We've also employed to date, we've covered every home in this specific area, and we've interviewed and spoken with families and children that go to the school here, and the community outlay and the support that we've had from the agencies, the FBI, all of our county agencies throughout the state, and the state of California and Washington are here supporting us in this effort.
There is an incredible support effort there. There are still so many questions, though, about what may have happened. Do you believe that little Kyron simply wandered off, or do you believe he may have been abducted?
We cannot put specifics on this. We have to look at every possibility. We are treating this as an endangered missing child. We're going to put every effort into this operation. And
is there any concern, because this is an endangered missing child, that the window may be closing to find Kyron safe and alive, hopefully?
The longer we go in this operation, the greater dangers and risks there are to the child, and this is why this effort is continuing at the level it is currently.
Well, we will continue to follow it. Sheriff Stan Staten and Tim Evinger, thank you for your time this morning.
Okay.
And there you have it. Washington, Oregon involved in finding Kyron. It wasn't just Oregon. We're talking Washington and California state also involved. And when she asked questions about Kyron's abductions, he's saying we have to look at all avenues. Now, that doesn't really sound like, that they're just focusing in and hyper focusing on one person to me.
No.
And this was a week prior to them looking and searching for Kyron. And we know a lot has already happened during this last week. We're not going to talk about that now. We're going to talk about it at the end. But yeah, here you got Dan Stanton. He's sitting there talking and telling everybody what they've done so far, how many agencies are involved in stuff. It's just really telling to hear. And in this clip here, he mentions, I believe, 20 different agencies, and at one point there were 32 counties in Oregon involved. Let's throw this one up.
This down to an operation where we have 20 detectives that are currently working on this investigation 24/7. These detectives are not only from the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, but from other agencies supporting us. That includes the FBI. We have had to date, as of the last conference I had with our detectives, we have 2,877 leads or tips that are valid that we are using in the course of this investigation. To date, we have about 60% of those leads covered, but each lead has developed something new for us to look at.
It was 20 investigators that they had, not agencies.
From all different agencies, though. He did say that.
Yes.
But yeah, it's straight from his mouth, He had so many leads and they were looking at every one. He said he wasn't confidently saying we've looked at every single lead yet because there were still more to look at, and that's what they've done. Just made sure that they've made sure that they're going in the right direction.
Exactly. And I mean, early on in the investigation, after it started, the card team with the FBI was activated immediately, pretty
that
much.
night. Yeah, that night or that evening they were there. I mean, they were scared when they got the 911 call that Kyron was missing. By that point, they were telling him he wasn't there at school all day when he was supposed to. They already were so afraid right off the bat. This kid has been missing for hours. We need every resource right off the bat. They weren't waiting. They already lost all their time that they could have afforded to wait. So there was no more waiting at that point. These resources were deployed that night. Desiree describes it in the book as coming up to like a city. It was dark, but it was light. It was like being in daytime, but it was night because it was so lit up at Skyline School with all of these agencies there that night.
I couldn't even believe being the mother driving or even a passenger and seeing all those lights. I remember that part of the book. It's something that I've read several times because it is so telling, you know, how she was feeling at the time. She wanted to turn to go towards the school. And then you have her husband, who is an investigator, telling her, no, we've got to go to the house. That's where investigators are going to be. They're going to have questions for us. But the sky was lit up.
Yeah, that's just goosebumps. Hard to put yourself in that position because you're right. Your mother instincts would be, take me to where my child was. Let me look. I'll find him. But I understand. Her and Tony seem like a good pair. They seem to work well, and he seems like a good support for her.
Hello, Chaos Queen. I don't know when you got here. Thank you for being here, hun. Thank you for moderating for us. So let's talk about the FBI card team and the search grid within the 2-mile radius of the school. Let me throw back up this video to give you guys all something to look at. So I am where the 2 blue circles are, Kalia. Okay. Day 3, FBI calls in criminal profile and search for missing Skyline boy. Interviews with students and parents begin. The FBI was brought a vast array of resources to help the search for today, including launching its child abduction rapid deployment team, and that is the card team. It's a regional team, although they have flown in members from across the county, including a Quantico-based profiler who is on site to help develop a complete profile of Kyron. Trained volunteers with sheriff's departments in Washington, Multnomah, Clark, and Yamhill counties, coupled with additional searchers from Portland Mountain Rescue, Silver City, and Portland Northwest Search and Rescue, was expected to continue into the night, said Sergeant Diana Olson, incident commander for Multnomah County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue. Saturday's search of the school is immediate grounds, and the 2-mile route between Kyron's home and the school yielded no clues, said Multnomah County Incident Commander Olson. 2-mile radius today of homes and fields, outbuildings, barns, tunnels, railroad tracks were all searched, Olson said. Lieutenant Mary Lindstad, Public Information Officer from Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, implored the public to come forward. Implored the public, say that 3 times, to come forward with any information they have about Kyron. She urged people not to let weather keep them from coming forward. There's that weather issue again, because before Kyron disappeared, there were record-breaking rain numbers. The day that they searched all morning long was pouring rain. It didn't clear up till almost 5 p.m. And then when searches began, it started pissing rain again. It was nothing but soggy rain for, I want to say, almost the first week and a half.
Yeah.
Let's see. Our basis mission is to bring Kyron home. 2 square mile grid search. The massive effort to find the second grader involves 4 county sheriff's department, the Portland Police Bureau, and a large number of federal agents with the FBI. So far, the search hasn't turned up any clues about the child's whereabouts. This is just crazy. As I'm sitting here, I've already read all of this, and as I read it out loud to everybody else, and I just sit here just so wowed by the search efforts and how many people were actually involved, and we haven't even yet begun to tell you guys what they've done. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the FBI came together from around the country. I don't know if it's even just something I should even talk about, or if I should just ignore the misinformation, but there's this misinformation out there that about Terri busting a steroid ring. And people say, oh, that's why they blame Terri, because she busted the steroid ring. But I'd like to remind people that the whole reason that the steroid ring got busted was actually because the FBI found out that the local Canby Police Department weren't investigating a crime. And so they came in, and that's why the steroid ring got busted. So you're going to tell me that they just busted the steroid ring, and then Terri somehow busted it and gets this credit for busting the steroid ring, which is just bizarre to me anyway. It's just not true, by the way. She's totally unrelated to that. I mean, she might have taken steroids allegedly, but she didn't bust no steroid ring. And the FBI is involved in Kyron's search and isn't busting corruption that they see, that's the whole reason that they busted the steroid ring, because corruption. That's what brought them to bust the steroid ring, was because a local police chief wasn't investigating a crime that was reported to him about his
employees.
His employees that were his friends. And so the FBI got a hold of that, and they did an internal investigation. They unraveled this huge ring. And so I just don't know how 2 and 2 equals 4 to people that say that. To me, that's like 1 + 3 = 10. What they're trying to say. Terri got credit for this steroid ring bust. Sorry, just had to point that out. Silly.
That's
FBI is very involved in Kyron's search. Still is to this day. Still puts out billboards for Kyron. Includes him on Missing Child Day on a almost pretty. It feels like several times in the last 14 years he's been talked about by the FBI. They've deliberately
done
podcasts.
They've done podcasts. They've done all kinds of stuff. Matter of fact, I got a little bit of a clip from one of their podcasts that they did, because it kind of clears up some misinformation about the FBI, the card team, what they are and aren't allowed to do. It goes over the rumor that spread that the FBI can't get involved until after 24 hours, because that's not true. It also clears up the rumor that goes around that the FBI can't get involved unless a child is taken over cross lines or state lines. That is also not true. The FBI can get involved. Now, when it comes to taking over a case, I'm not saying they can take over a case, but they can get involved. And I just want to throw that out there, because there's a lot of FBI talk going on right now in the Sebastian Rogers case. I'm not talking about the FBI taking over. I'm talking about the FBI just being involved, the card team being involved.
Yeah.
Yes. Assisting in this investigation. Mm-hmm. Because we have not only the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and all of these other communities that we've already talked about, but we also have retired detectives working on this case. The sheriff of Multnomah County right now was married to the main investigator in Kyron's case when he
for the first couple years. Yeah.
Yeah, for the first couple of years he disappeared, he was on the case and she was married to him, and now she's our sheriff, which is awesome to know. But I
Yes.
just want to throw up this information about the card team real quick.
Team comes in. The team, which is currently made up of 75 agents, analysts, and other Bureau personnel from across the country, teaches local law enforcement officers how to respond to child abductions. When a child goes missing, law enforcement can contact their local FBI office and ask for assistance from the team.
So the card team is a tool for local law enforcement. We're consultants, if you will. So there's nothing that says anyone has to use the card team, but my job sometimes is to go out there and convince local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and local field offices for that matter, why they would want to use us.
Once state...
Can you hear that, Kalia?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. It's really low on my side.
and local authorities ask the card team for help on a case, the team gets to work, first learning everything they can about that missing child. After they've gathered information about the child and the circumstances of their disappearance, they partner with police on the investigation. The tactics they use can involve canvassing the area, interviewing family, friends, and neighbors, and looking at what the child was doing online around the time they vanished. The FBI also often uses publicity tools to spread the word to the community. And even if authorities have reason to believe that the child wasn't kidnapped, the card team will still provide assistance. What does it take for the FBI to help in finding a missing kid? As soon as a child isn't where they're supposed to be, we want to know, and we want to help. But when it comes to missing children, there are a lot of myths out there that Granozio and his team work to dispel. You've probably heard there's something like a 24-hour rule. This notion that the FBI won't get involved in a case until after the first 24 hours. Or that the FBI can only investigate kidnappings if it's thought that the child had been taken to a different state. These are damaging, potentially deadly myths. As Jim explains,
no need to wait 24 hours. There's absolutely no need to show interstate travel that the child crossed interstate lines. No need for an Amber Alert. No need to even show evidence of an abduction. The mysterious disappearance, meaning the child is just not where they're supposed to be, is enough for us to get involved and get involved very, very early.
so if you think a child is missing, it's never too soon to call someone.
Yeah, they want to be involved immediately, especially when it's involving a young child.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have to wait 24 hours. If a child comes up missing, you can call the FBI. And in Kyron's case, he had already been missing 6 to 7 hours, and the FBI was needed. I mean, I think Dan Statton did an amazing job getting them in there immediately. They get the Green Hornet involved. They've got Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, search and rescue already out there, searching for Kyron. They're making up a grid. They're using different maps to make their grid, and they're trying to close in on a certain area to just really, really search this 2-mile radius for Kyron. And then the search just starts, moving outward from there. But the agencies and the people that they have involved is just insane.
Yeah, truly. It's great to see, though. But yeah, they were right there right away from the beginning.
And
still are.
Yeah. And let's talk about the war room. What is the war room? What's in the war room? Kalia, if you want to read about the war room, it's where the 3 brown circles are.
All right, just a moment.
And then it's the Kyron Horman Inside the Investigation and War Room. And then when you're done reading, I've got a couple videos of the War Room. Kyron Horman goes into the War Room. A reporter goes into the War Room. When you see the video and you see the perspective, it's so crazy to see all of these binders and everything. And at one time, Detective Taber told me once he became investigator of Kyron's case that all of those files had to be put onto a computer. And when that happened, somebody decided they were going to put all of those files onto the computer, but they weren't going to name the files. They just took all that information and dumped it. Tens of thousands of files dumped into a computer with no filing system, nothing. He has had to go through this information, file it up along with other people working on it, and get it in order before he could even start investigating Kyron's disappearance.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy. I know they had a system to take that to like check leads early on, but that's crazy that they just dumped it digitally once they decided to make it all digital. But yeah, maybe it was an accident. Who knows? That's just. I'm glad
Well,
he
now that
took
you
the time
hear
to do
him,
that.
yeah, and now that you hear him say that we only know a tenth and that there's
Right?
tens of thousands of files, I'm just sitting here cringing.
Oh
like,
yeah, I know,
whoa.
right? I totally feel the
Because
same.
I'm a computer dinosaur, and that would really stress me the frig out. It just would.
Oh, that would take so long. Your eyes would burn. Okay. Here we go. Inside the investigation war room. At the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office is a room dedicated to a little boy with a big smile. It is a room full of binders and maps where detectives coordinate their investigation into the disappearance of Kyron Horman. In many ways, the room looks like a war room. There are maps that show in great detail exactly where they have searched for Kyron, and the numbers of tips is staggering. Detectives have chased down nearly 4,500 leads. Sources tell News Channel 8 that they have looked at scores of potential suspects and have interviewed more than 450 people. Chief Deputy Jason Gates has worked the case since day one. He was the face of the investigation at the press conference and at several search sites. But the humanness of the situation overwhelmed much of what was being talked about. We cared about this little boy and his family, and that's what it's all about, Gates says. He's not the only one. Countless sheriff's deputies and 6 criminal behaviorists and profilers from the FBI have worked this case. But to Gates and others, there is something disturbing. It's disturbing to our public because we have a child that went missing from a school. It has been nearly a year since we learned that a child who had just shown his work at a school science fair suddenly vanished from Skyline Elementary School. That day, the last person to see him alive was his stepmother, Terri Horman. It is a very human story about one little boy. Deputy Gates and everyone committed to finding Kyron pledges to keep the war room going until the case is cracked. We don't want to lose here. We want to win. We want to win for Kyron. We want to win for his family. We want to win for the public we serve. That's a quote from Jason Gates. There are 68 binders filled with 4,500 leads that investigators like Sergeant Keith Kraft, the lead detective, have spent 11 months following and piecing together. Kraft says they still receive tips, including one from the state of Maine on the day of a reporter was allowed into the epicenter of the investigation. I think about Kyron pretty much every day, he says. Room 200A is a bare-bones second-floor conference room at the Sheriff's Administrative Office in Northeast Portland. An enlarged photo of a smiling, bespectacled Kyron standing before his school science fair project sits prominently against a whiteboard. Metal shelving holds 63 white binders, each 4 inches thick, filled with thousands of pages of police reports. 2 laptops on a conference table contain the FBI software that sorts the 4,200 tips received. Stacks of maps in a room down the hall plot the 155 square miles that have been searched. Woof, 155 square miles, and that was in 2011.
Yeah.
Imagine how many square miles and the amount of man hours put into this investigation. It is bigger than any one of us could ever wrap our heads around. I mean, just envisioning what they're describing, it's hard.
How many miles did you say?
155 square miles, and this was published in May 2011, so less than a year.
For a little bit of perspective, because I know this area quite well, if you're in the Skyline School area, you have Highway 30 that's nearby. You also have Highway 26. Both lead to the Oregon coast. So you could get it. I mean, that's 150 miles out. You're talking all the way down to the coast. You're talking way over past where you live, Kalia, in Oregon City, over here, Vancouver, Washington, 150 miles. Let's see. We're talking probably almost to Rochester or up in Centralia area as far as coming up and going north in Washington. 150 miles south in Oregon would probably take you to Salem area, past Salem area. That's huge.
That is absolutely massive.
That is gigantic.
Yeah, that really is crazy.
Wow.
And like I've always just envisioned, I feel like they've always felt like he was just right there. You know, if we just look here, he's going to be there. If we just look here, he's going to be there. And they just like checked all these places off their list because there's only so far that their suspect, who's never been named officially a suspect, but you know, there's only so far that somebody could have taken him when in those 2 hours and 40 minutes that they haven't accounted for.
Yeah, Zane Lilly says people often underestimate how massive the forested area is here. Every time I go hiking to High View Point, it blows me away. Yeah, and we're talking about a rainforest in Forest Park area, which, by the way, since we're on that subject, I did a bunch of videos in Forest Park areas. Those will be talked about in one of our next lives, and then videos will be posted about them later, but I'm going to share them in a live show, one of our next lives on Kyron. It was really amazing to find some things that I've been looking for. It was really nice to show a new search area that I found by watching a newscast of Desiree searching for Kyron. Saw something in the background and was like, oh, I know that spot. So I went and took a video of that. And if you guys get the chance and you guys want to consider becoming a member, please click the link. Please also like or share our video to get the word out about Kyron. That's our main objective here. We appreciate everybody being here all the time. We're always super excited to talk about Kyron, if you guys can't tell. I mean, when we can find new information.
Yeah, exactly. And surprisingly, you know, if you comb through articles that you've read in the past, you can really, it is interesting how different things stand out to you differently when your mind is in a different place. So, yeah, I mean, Kyron's case is 14 years old, but we love to deep dive it. And yeah, we have some great plans for the future for our channel and for topics to cover and talk about. And yeah, thanks for being here.
So let's show you guys the war room. Let's see it. I want you guys to see it. Get a perspective. Here we go.
Kyron was reported missing and sparked an investigation and a search.
That was Detective Gates, by the way. Oh, wait. What did I do?
Process that was unprecedented in Oregon, involved thousands of people, tens of thousands of hours of investigation and search and rescue time.
Weeks went by with no sign of Kyron, and pretty soon, all sights were set on his stepmother, Terri.
Terri Horman was the last person that we know of that saw Kyron at 8:45 on June 4, 2010. Initially, Terri Horman was cooperating with our investigators fully and was communicating with them. And approximately 28 days into the investigation, she hired an attorney and stopped talking to us altogether.
Kane says Terri failed 2 polygraphs and walked out on a third. It wasn't long after Terri stopped cooperating when investigators dropped a bombshell on Kane.
And then we got briefed on the murder for hire plot that they had discovered while looking at some of the people associated with the case.
It was shocking news for Kane. Terri allegedly tried to hire a landscaper to kill him. Kane quickly got a restraining order and filed for divorce. When the couple split, Terri turned her back on their young daughter, Kira, and has not seen her child in more than 2 years. With more than 5,000 leads, 60,000 investigative hours, and 71 investigative binders, Kane has not given up, and he will never give up. From the moment he wakes up until the time he goes to bed, Kane is figuring out ways to keep the word out about Kyron.
Kane has organized a campaign to keep Kyron's name out in the public eye. And he's been at some sort of event every weekend.
You were invited today inside what's called the War Room. Well, it's the nerve center of the entire Kyron Horman investigation, and it's up there on the second floor. We've wanted to actually get inside those rooms over about a year now, wanting to see what detectives have been up to. For the first time, those doors and detectives were open.
This room is where we keep the records of all the tips.
It's a rare glimpse behind the forbidden door, the epicenter of the Kyron Horman investigation. Are you still getting tips today?
Yes. We had a tip an hour ago from the state of Maine, as a matter of fact.
These 68 binders filled with those 4,500 leads, all for one boy Sergeant Keith Kraby spent 11 months trying to find. How often are you thinking about Kyron's case and thinking about Kyron, and what are you thinking about when you do?
I think about the Kyron case pretty much every day.
It's one of those things in my life. I can remember what happened to me on 9/11. I remember when I got the call for Kyron and what I was doing. And yeah, I was one of the first responding people. And, you know, it's disappointing that he hasn't come home yet, but we still believe he will.
Sergeant Travis Goldberg is part of the search and rescue team. Down the hall, their base.
What you're looking at, maps that represent what's been done.
The center point for volunteer search teams, Skyline School.
And then as you start to put the overlays on it, you start to see what was completed, who it was completed by, what type of team they were, where they searched, and then you just keep building layer on layer.
What is the effect, do you think, emotionally on them every time they go out and every time they come back without him?
It's amazing to me. These individuals are so committed to finding Kyron, to bringing him home, and I don't see them giving that up at all.
But 11 months in, it's hard for these investigators not to let those dark thoughts creep in. Do you still believe he's alive at this point?
I sure hope he is. I hold out some hope he is. We don't have any physical evidence to suggest he's deceased, but it's been 11 months, and I'm a realist, and it wouldn't surprise me if he is deceased.
Detectives tell us the case against whomever did this would be much further along if they had Kyron either alive or not. The sheriff, by the way, did tell me that he's in discussions and negotiations with the district attorney right now to see how this case should proceed. We hope to have an idea of what that plan is in the next couple of days. Live in Northeast Portland, Anita.
That's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. That is crazy. I've never seen that news clip before.
Yeah, and it mentioned 71 binders in the very first video. It's obvious that the second part of that was an older one. I just want to hear, what was it, 60,000 something? It was in the beginning. I want to see if, hold on one second.
Initially, Terri Horman was cooperating with our investigators fully and was communicating with them. And approximately 28 days into the investigation, she hired an attorney and stopped talking to us altogether.
Kane says Terri failed 2 polygraphs and walked out on a third. It wasn't long after Terri stopped cooperating when investigators dropped a bombshell on Kane.
Some of the people associated with the case.
It was shocking news for Kane. Terri allegedly tried a restraining order and filed for divorce. When the couple split, Terri turned her back on their young daughter, Kira, and has not seen her in 71 investigations.
60,000 investigative hours and 71 investigative binders. That's what I saw that I wanted to see again.
Mm-hmm. That's, like I said, hard to wrap your head around. That is a massive amount of effort put into this. And just like the reporter said, this case would be a lot further along if they had Kyron one way or the other. It's just, the echo of Kyron's case, unfortunately. Man, just seeing that figure, 60,000, that's massive.
Yeah,
That's
it
early
is.
on. Imagine now. I mean, I know that you and I, like we've talked about, collectively have researched Kyron's case thousands of hours. Imagine just like all of this intention put on Kyron's case. It's like, come on, universe, come through for Kyron, you know, like
Right.
so many people put so much intention to Kyron's case. I say that like, if you know, you know what I mean when I say that. It's just like, come on.
Right. And then you have you know, the fact that it didn't turn into a criminal investigation until day 10. They were looking for Kyron as a missing person, as whatever, whether he was abducted or, you know, whatever. They were looking into everything until the 10th day when they finally decided to turn it into a criminal investigation.
Right.
I'm going to read the search before the criminal investigation. I'll throw up the video again so that everybody can watch it and get a perspective, because some of the stuff, like these are the binders. This is the search grid that they showed in the last video too. I mean, or, you know, the map grid. That was insane when they were like flipping through and showing each, you know, see-through thing and throwing another one on to show further, going out in the vicinity further and further and further. Oh,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Right, exactly.
Kyron Horman still missing. Crews from 18 Oregon counties unite to search. On a day when rain in torrents across muddy hillsides and sylvan creeks gushed down steep fern-choked canyons, as many as 120 searchers from 18 Oregon counties added their boots on the ground Thursday in search for the 7-year-old Kyron Horman. In many places around Skyline School, atop the Tualatin Mountains, it was a struggle not only to search, but also to remain upright as the ground soaked by 2 weeks of unusually heavy rain loosened the soil beneath searchers' feet. As that rain has fueled a wild riot of tangled vegetation, chin-high grasses, and ankle-grabbing vines. Obviously, the weather slows them down, says Sergeant Diana Olson, the search and rescue coordinator for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. But they are all still going to be as thorough as they are. Searchers may not last as long in a day if the weather was nicer or under ideal conditions, but they are going to keep going. Though investigators won't talk about how they think Kyron disappeared, the all-out search is similar to what happens when children wander off on their own. Authorities have characterized Kyron as a missing and endangered child. Multnomah County Sheriff's Captain Monty Reeser acknowledged that people are wondering why investigators have released so few details about the search and what they know. If information gets out too early or before authorities have sustained the tips, it can affect the integrity of the investigation, he said. Misleading information can hamper both the search effort and the investigation, which we both know because we have tried to debunk any kind of rumor in this case since the very beginning.
Right.
Incident commanders also said they would respect the Horman's family wishes not to share their anguish with the public. In the meantime, Reeser said the search will continue dawn to dusk and beyond. Crews from Jackson, Tillamook, Clackamas, and Washington counties and Pacific Northwest Search and Rescue set up base camp Thursday morning on Northwest Quarry Road at the Multnomah County Maintenance Shop, less than a mile southeast of the school. That's also located directly across the street from Sauvie Island Road on Highway 30, if anybody knows the area. Waves of searches arrived in the caravans at the camp from the county's mothballed Wapato jail, where they're sleeping. I can't believe they had to use a jail just to keep a place for searchers and volunteers and stuff to
stay from all these places.
stay.
Right, exactly.
Some towed horses, mobile command trailers, and 4x4 ATVs, and others were blaze orange and were packed into TriMet buses from the camp. They stuffed into vans about a dozen at a time and dropped along gravel roads, steep roadside cuts, remote farms, and forest slopes. Wow. Can you imagine? They're going back and forth. They're having to go, fill up the bus, come back, pick more people up, fill up the bus. This is what they're having to do to transport the searchers and volunteers and stuff that are helping in this search.
Yeah.
Throughout the day, teams went back over areas searched in the arc around the school. They also searched near areas based on hours of investigation, said Multnomah County Sheriff's Captain Jason Gates. Gates called the effort the most extensive ever mounted in Multnomah County. This is incredible, he said, of the tide of searchers. It's overwhelming. These people, these men and women are coming to us and have been all week. I can't express what a huge help this has been. The searchers said they were more than happy to help. They arrived with a team from Jackson County and said he used to work with children Kyron's age, and he was a teacher. The story of the missing second grader hit home, he said, and that was said by Eric Ronimus. It's every school's nightmare to have that happen. Hopefully we will find him. New searches bring much needed fresh eyes to the effort, he says. We're able to take the time rather than the beginning of the search when everything is done very, very fast and slow down. Teams across the state depend on volunteers like Romanus, people who want to give back to their communities and lend a hand when needed, said Sean Richards, the search and rescue coordinator for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. It used to be that if you had a situation like this, you had to gauge what you threw at it within the first 24 hours, because if you used everything up, you were done, Richards said. Now you can pretty much throw everything you have at it, and know there is going to be somebody there to have your back. And how to help. So at the Skyline Grange, there was a kitchen to help feed the searchers, bring contributions of food to the Brook Hills Church, which is across the street from Skyline Elementary. They were taking contributions of nuts and packaged snacks, granola bars, water bottles, and juices, and other non-perishable food items for the searchers that could be dropped off at those two places. There was even a potluck for Kyron, and it was held at 2:30 p.m. on a Saturday in Hamilton Park. And I mean, this is just the community getting together. Not only do we have like all of these search and rescue units and all of the different law enforcement agencies and volunteers, we now have volunteers putting together food and snacks and everything that these people need to be able to survive, to do what they're out there doing in soaking wet weather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is also incredible. I have read and heard interviews of the people the volunteers that were working the Grange and the church and the quarry search center, and they were describing so much food that they were preparing, and it was all for the searchers. Just crazy. I mean, like, they were just going through food left and right, and it's just great to see. You know, it's interesting and heartbreaking, like I've always said, the ripples of the community, and they really just rallied for Kyron and his family.
They did.
Yeah, it's cool to see. I mean, the Grange is still there. The Skyline Grange is still a big part of the community. I was just looking into them not too long ago.
Yes, and it continues as much as it has been about basic boots on the ground and in the saddle on horseback. The search also has employed the latest technology. Search groups are using satellite tracking devices, so the communication coordinators know exactly where they have searched or researched on the grid. I found that information really interesting. I've never heard that before. I was so glad to find this article. In the grid searches, people walk side by side to look for small clues, said Steve Rollins, rescue leader and past president of Portland Mountain Rescue, which joined the search. So here's another rescue. Portland Mountain Rescue joining in. Dogs were deployed, canine units, including tracking dogs trained to search for one particular person, have worked every day looking for Kyron, officials said. Air sent dogs have also been deployed, said Russ, president of Mountain Wave, an emergency communications and search and rescue group based in Gresham. They're trained to find a human being, anyone in a particular site. Searchers also have access to cadaver dogs, but wouldn't say whether they have checked the fields or the school. He also wouldn't say whether dogs have searched the school, but Gates said search teams have checked Skyline extensively several times. It's not unusual to search the same areas twice or more. It's a good practice to check and recheck, he said, just in case something was missed, especially in the bad weather and in darkness. Leo Stobenerich, I think is what his name is, also from the Jackson County crew, said he became a trained searcher 3 years ago after he retired. He's looking for anything that might help find Kyron. We're searching for any clues, if he might have dropped his hat or something of that nature, but mainly we're looking for a live 7-year-old boy. That is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is what's going on right when they're fixing to turn this into a criminal investigation. Sitting here watching these pictures, and
Me too.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I'm glad you put them out. There's a lot of great ones. I've seen a lot that I am going to go on replay and screenshot myself because I want to talk about more things I'm seeing.
These pictures, I have them up in our Pacific Northwest group.
Okay.
No, I don't know that I have them there. I need to add you to my other group that I have where I keep all my Kyron information.
Yeah.
I've literally have like 5 years worth of information in there.
Oh,
and I only keep it so that I can download all of my screenshots that fill up my phone constantly, and I just put it over there. And like we've said before,
Smart.
you guys, everything that we talk about tonight, all of the links, everything will be added over to our Facebook group or in the community for everybody to see. Hello, Anne. My brother was a search and rescue when this was going on. Oh my gosh, how interesting. Did he do search and rescue on Kyron? Is that what you're saying? Or was he just in the search and rescue work? Kalia, if you want to read from where the 3 diamonds are. I know you guys are like circles, diamonds, squares, and whatnot. This is how we're keeping track. We have put all of our information into a little file, and this is how we're like going through everything.
The yellow diamonds?
Orange. I might have said yellow.
Orange. I think they're orange. Yeah. With the red border.
Let me see if I can find them real quick. I'm thinking so. I don't know. They're orange.
I think they're orange. I'm looking. I think
there may have been the. Oh yeah, it says investigation with the red. Yes, you are correct.
Okay, perfect. It should not be a surprise that investigators looking into the disappearance of Kyron Horman 3 years ago from Skyline Elementary School in Northwest Portland have a pretty strong idea of what happened to the child. More than a dozen law enforcement agencies, with Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and the Multnomah County DA's office at the lead, including every single police department in the metro region, as well as numerous federal departments, including the FBI and the DEA, have been involved. 3 years to the day since Kyron was reported missing, the case is now under the supervision of its third lead investigator. Part of that has been because of normal promotions, but part of the rotation has been to keep bringing in fresh perspectives. People involved in the search know that it's easy to hear the name Kyron and assume the case will never be solved, to think that this case is on the back burner, but it's not. They want to talk publicly about the case, about what they're doing, about their frustrations, their emotions, but they can't talk in detail to reporters for the record. There's just too much at stake. Yet, still they talk amongst each other and with others. This reporting is based on the conversations they have and have been related to K2, a local news station. They want to talk about how they feel and they are getting closer, about how every week they're able to eliminate theories which bring them closer to what will be resolution. In the 3 years since June 4th, 2010, they have conducted far more than 1,000 interviews. Some 900 alone were conducted with the staff of the school, as well as the children who went there and with their parents. Thousands of tips have been pursued from all 50 states and more than a dozen countries around the world. They still get anywhere from 15 to 75 tips a week. There is not a notion too fantastical for them to pursue. From unalive victim to being sold into S trafficking to being kidnapped by gypsies, one would think that there is not a possible fate of Kyron that they have not explored. Every week.
Can you pause right there for a second?
Yeah.
They even talk about gypsies. You know, I read articles that I didn't even put up for us to share and talk about. There were several different articles that mentioned the leads and the things that they have followed as far as psychics. And here they're even saying, you know, the SA trafficked and stuff, because a lot of people ask that, you know, a lot, what they believe. And it's like their theory, and they are convinced that he was trafficked. Like, you can't tell them any other, you can't tell them any different. And everybody is allowed to have their own opinion. But I mean, yeah, I found it very amazing to see that they are looking under every rock, under every bush, crevice, every single person that they can possibly consider.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's being looked at.
I mean,
not just
they're not
hyper-focused.
If we're going to sit there and look at all those binders full of information, you're either going to tell me that all of that is Terri and she's really, really guilty. I mean, that's a lot of evidence to have on one person. Or they've looked at so many people and so many leads that that's how much information they've compiled in his case. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm so glad that we're taking the time to deep dive this topic. I mean, this is one that I think is a great topic to talk about. I mean, Terri, the reason that everybody thinks Terri is guilty is her own fault. There's so much circumstantial evidence in her own actions that lead people and the police to not be able to eliminate her as a suspect in this, as somebody that definitely had the opportunity, potentially had the motive, and had the means to get this done. It's just
and
crazy.
When you think about the fact that he says that there's all those files and we only know less than 1/10 of it, that's huge in itself. And then if you think about the investigation and everything that they've done, I mean, 13, 14 years later, and those binders were that thick and those case files were that big in the beginning. We're talking 2010, 11, and 12 when they talked about the war room.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's been a long time since then. A long time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm sorry. I'll let you finish reading.
All right. They don't trumpet what they are doing for several reasons, including the fact that it's an active investigation. Furthermore, beyond the criminal probe, there is also a pending civil litigation. Investigators won't talk publicly about the tens of thousands of cell phone records that have been sifted through, and the thousands more still to go. They won't talk about the surveillance they have done and the wiretaps that they have listened to.
Can you pause right there again?
Mm-hmm.
This one was one of the articles because this had things in it that I'd never heard before. They're talking tens of thousands of cell phone records and cell phone pings. And then what else did it say after that?
Tens of thousands still to go. So
yeah, and then there was something else even after that.
Oh, the surveillance and the wiretaps that they've listened to.
Yes, wiretapping and surveillance. You see, this was something too. In doing this live, this was a huge deep dive. This information that I was able to find, that we were able to find, this wasn't hard, or this wasn't easy to find. I have spent so many hours this last week searching for any kind of information out there talking about what law enforcement actually did. We've heard about the search dogs and the ATVs, the horses, and all of that kind of stuff. Never heard anything about, wiretapping or anything like that, or surveillance, or a number to go with cell phone pings.
Yeah, records and pings.
Yeah, because that means that they're not looking at just Terri. She ain't got tens of thousands of pings. They're looking at everybody in the area. They're looking at all different kinds of pings going off of the towers and everything else. The only ping that I know of that they found of Terri was off of Highway 30. I mean, we're not trying to talk about her right now. We want to talk about what investigators have done before they started focusing in on her. But yeah, I find it very amazing to just hear this information and get this information out there to let people know, like, there's so much behind closed doors that have never been talked about. And unless you're going to take the time to research and look, you're not going to find the information.
Yeah, it's totally, especially after so long, it's not easy to find anymore. This isn't the thing that has been reported about in the last several years, so you really, really have to throw it back and find it. So really great job on all of this, because I haven't heard a lot of this news clips I've never seen, and it's definitely a great topic, and it's a great refresher for people to remember that they will never give up. Any tip, it doesn't matter, they will look into it. If it's a credible tip, they will look into it. They are dedicated to bringing Kyron home still. So I'll continue here. Recently, for the fourth time since the investigation began, there was a meeting with not just those directly involved in the day-to-day probe, but people from outside agencies as well. The purpose was to get some fresh eyes on the case, see what's been done, and see if anything jumps out. It was a chance to take the long view, the view from on high. People who had not been living the investigation examined the roads taken and made some suggestions about the roads that hadn't. While those involved in the investigation will tell you that they have a strong idea of what happened, they will also concede that they are a long way from being able to prove it. It's one thing to get an indictment, it's another thing to get a conviction. They could obtain an indictment, but they are still not where they need to be, which is to be able to prove their case without beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a different standard, and they don't want to get an indictment until they can clear that second higher bar. You won't hear of any of those involved in the case talk about the case. You won't hear them talk about how they won't rest until they have eliminated every single possibility except for those that point to the ones who did it. Sorry. You won't hear them talk about how they won't rest until they have eliminated every single possibility except for the one that points to who did it. And Kane and Desiree have said the exact same thing. They have reiterated this. They have called this a marathon. Kane has said, absent of Terry's cooperation, we have to look in every single other direction. I mean, that's what we're seeing. It's what we're hearing. It is immense.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always heard the, largest search in Oregon's history. And it wasn't until I started finding all of this information that I was like, wow. Wow. I mean, I almost kind of feel like there's a few recent searches for missing children. They're getting to be this large, actually, which is really sad because we don't want more missing children out there. But it was definitely something that I've noticed here lately.
I think that's a true statement. Maybe not in Oregon, but across the country. Yeah.
Yeah. Here is another article. Oregon News joins search for boy. Authorities searching the area around a rural Portland school for 7-year-old Kyron Horman say that crews from 36 counties in Oregon will join the search for the boy, for Kyron. Authorities searching the area around a rural Portland school for 7-year-old Kyron Horman on Wednesday. The crews from all 36 counties in Oregon will join the search for the boy who disappeared Friday. The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office have been leading the search since it began. The additional search and rescue teams were expected to begin arriving Wednesday night and would scour the area Thursday. Kyron's family released a statement at the news conference asking residents around the school to check and recheck their property, outbuildings and sheds for any signs of the boy. Please don't stop. The statement ended as read by Sheriff's Captain Mike Schultz, who is acting as a liaison for the family during the search. Schultz said he has been with the family almost the entire time. I stand here in front of you today because I carry the burden of sadness and pain they are experiencing. He said the family chose not to appear in order to keep the focus on Kyron rather than to shift it on themselves. The intensive search has included helicopters and dogs and has stretched to metropolitan Portland as it entered the 6th day, but it remained focused primarily on a half-a-mile radius around Skyline Elementary School, which is atop a ridge with a mix of forest and open areas. Obviously, this was before the 2-mile radius around the school, because this was like day 4 or 5. The search force, composed primarily of certified volunteers in neon green vests and t-shirts, continued to check roadsides and ventured into the dense foliage that surrounds the school. Multnomah County Sheriff's Captain Jason Gates said his agency was going to ask sheriff's offices statewide to call up several hundred trained searchers to assist the teams already in place, which includes the FBI. Gates also said the FBI was installing a mobile command post to expand communications and computer resources. He said investigators were still receiving tips constantly and tracking all of them down, but he declined to say how many tips have came in. On Monday, he put the number of tips at 1,200. Gates said investigators had already checked the police in St. Helens after a 36-year-old man was arrested Wednesday following a report by a boy walking home from school Tuesday that the man tried to kidnap him. Gates declined to give any other details. St. Helens police did not immediately return calls from the Associated Press on Wednesday afternoon. This particular person that they're talking about that was investigated, his name was Tony Phipps, and he was a RSO and RCO.
Yes.
I said it right the first time.
That guy's a horrible guy.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
We are talking all the way back until the later 1980s, continuously, repeatedly, not registering as RSO.
Mm-hmm.
On multiple accounts, it was usually on young women. He was using alcohol to to get them drunk and stuff, and then wanted to SA them. The SA assaults were, they're hard to talk about, and I won't talk about them because they were really, really bad. And this guy tried to kidnap a boy in St. Helens, which is only
an
I want to
hour,
say
maybe?
like 12, 15 miles away. It's like a 25-minute drive to St. Helens. And Terry's supporters will have you they'll try to convince you that this guy was never looked into, that this could have been the guy that took Kyron. The thing is even though this here says that they were investigating him after this happened, because again, here he is trying to take a boy by a school, just like Kyron was disappeared. I actually found this information on him, did a case study on him, found out that the FBI had gotten in on the investigation. He spent time in jail. They know he had nothing to do with Kyron's disappearance because of where he was and where they were able to verify him at the time that Kyron had came up missing. So when I found this in this article, I'd never seen him. Well, he's not mentioned. His name's not mentioned, so that would probably be why I couldn't find Tony Phipps by looking through this. But this is one of the other first articles that I've ever seen other than the FBI article that I found talking about him, period, because they don't talk about him. There were a lot of people speculating on whether or not he had anything to do with Kyron's disappearance.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gates remained optimistic and said, any decisions to scale back or stop the search will be made when necessary, but the sheriff's office, whoa, I just lost my place. But the sheriff's office and other law enforcement agencies remain fully committed to finding Kyron. He called the other county's involvement a natural progression under a system to guide multi-agency rescue operations that was approved in the legislature in 2007. The system was developed in the aftermath of a major search in December of 2006 for a missing San Francisco family that got stuck in the snow on a remote mountain road in Southern Oregon. I remember when that happened. James Kim died while trying to walk out to find his wife and 2 young daughters who were rescued later on. Yeah, the man left and walked away, left the vehicle to find help for him and his family. And he ended up dying because of the snow and how cold it was and everything else. I don't know if you remember this. I remember this when this happened.
I don't.
It was crazy. And then they were, they did find the 2 daughters and the wife still alive in the vehicle. But yeah, he passed away trying. So they had taken steps after that to put together different kinds of search and rescue teams and stuff so that nothing like this would happen again and people could be found much sooner rather than later.
Wow. Yeah. Makes sense. My goodness. Geez.
And then, let's see. If you want to read where the yellow squares are.
Yellow squares.
Yeah, this talks about law enforcement stopping vehicles in the road to talk to people, to find out where they were or if they were in the area when Kyron came up missing and everything else. So much that they did.
Right. 22 state and local. Sorry, let me restart. 22 state, local, and federal agencies are following up on more than 1,200 tips in the search for 7-year-old Portland boy who has been missing for 4 days. Multnomah County Sheriff's deputies and volunteers have been searching the densely wooded area near the pastoral school since then. On Monday morning, deputies and FBI agents posted about 40 yards from the school, stopped approaching cars, and asked passengers whether they were at the school Friday or had any information about Kyron. Multnomah County Captain Jason Gates described the variety of tips as leads that aren't as exciting and other leads that are more prevalent. We need more, he said at a news conference Monday. Every tip, no matter how insignificant you think it is, could be the one that we need. Visitors to the school are assigned badges, but Portland Public School District spokesperson Matt Shelby said it would have been difficult to assign a badge to each visitor among the friends and family members who attended a science fair Friday morning. It was unclear whether Kyron was in class Friday or when anyone noticed he was missing because the police have been reticent to disclose public details of the search. Shelby said authorities don't want to give out information that could contradict a potential witness recollection, but the school has a good idea of when Kyron was reported absent. We don't want to cloud anyone's recollection, Shelby said. We'll defer to the authorities. An auto-dial system used to report absences in Portland high schools and middle schools was not yet installed at Skyline Elementary, Shelby said. The system has been installed in 37 of the district's 57 schools. Shelby said the system would have alerted a parent's primary phone number at about midday that his or her student was absent. Kyron, we're going to bring you home, buddy, Gates said as he struggled to control his emotions at the news conference. Nothing is more important to your family, your friends, or to us. Yeah, so they were even stopping cars on the road. They were trying not to cloud people's memories. Honestly, I've worked for a bank. I worked for a bank for 10 years, guys. And we were trained on bank robberies. Of course we were. And you know what they say? Don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to anybody until the police come here. You wait. If a bank robbery happens, all of you guys need to just don't say, oh my God, what just happened? Because then you guys start sharing memories with each other. And I'm sure that the police, when this happened, I'm sure that was taken into consideration 150%, especially knowing that the FBI card team was involved from the very get-go. These people were influencing the investigation and helping guide them. And so
I even heard that they had did some kind of, not a restraining order, but it was something legal through the court system that made it to where the media couldn't take pictures of people coming and going that were going in and out of the courthouse to testify to the grand jury, and people coming and going that were talking to law enforcement at the school.
Right. That's important. I mean, imagine there are so many children witnesses that were there. I mean, I know we only know of the few. There might be more. They were getting everybody's pictures. They were asking everybody. They were looking through everyone's family photos. And, you know, this article talks about it would have been hard to give a badge. I totally see that. I mean, we just had bingo night at our school not that long ago. And yeah, it is kind of chaotic whenever there's so many people there. And there were students there that were arriving by bus that weren't necessarily, they didn't have family. So, I mean, it just was an interesting situation and a small, tight-knit community where this was the unimaginable. And I mean, honestly, they never had anything that happened like this before. And sometimes, I mean, like I said, I worked at a bank for 10 years. Sometimes policies get slipped when things are lax, but it only takes that one time that you learn your lesson and you never lax on a policy or anything again. And that's exactly what Kyron's was. This community never had anything like this before that.
Yeah, I mean, and there was so much information leaked in the very beginning too.
Yeah, right.
A lot of information that was leaked. In this next article that I'm going to read, it talks about persons of interest. You it blew my mind to hear how many persons of interest that they actually had almost a year later. Portland, Oregon, a task force that has conducted more than 3,500 interviews and invested. And I just want to stop right there. And all of these articles, they're from all different times. That's why you're hearing different numbers in the amount of interviews, tips, and stuff like that that are coming in, because all of these articles are from over 13 years of investigation. So somewhere in the very beginning, somewhere later. So that's why numbers are varying during these articles. A task force has conducted more than 3,500 interviews, invested more than 26,650 hours investigating the disappearance of Kyron Horman, Oregon boy from Portland, Oregon, 1 year ago. Is set to disband at the end of the month. A lead sheriff's detective will continue to work full-time on the Kyron Horman case with help from the FBI, Oregon Justice Department, and county prosecutors. Multnomah County Sheriff Dan Stanton told Oregonian newspaper. Obviously, I'm disappointed. We haven't found him. We haven't made an arrest, but I'm not disappointed with the progress of the investigation, he said. There isn't a night I don't think any of us don't wish we had come to a conclusion by now. Over the past year, authorities have compiled 68 4-inch binders of information and collected more than 4,500 leads. In addition to investigators' work, search and rescue officials and volunteers have put in 24,638 hours toward looking for Kyron, who was last seen June 4th, 2010 at the science fair at Skyline Elementary School. The multi-agency task force was looked at RSOs in the area of the school and have also examined the Horman home, visitors of the school that day, and others who may have made cell phone calls. So here they're saying again, people that have made cell phone calls in the area that were routed to towers near the school. They're looking into RSOs. I know that they've even given some polygraph tests if they thought any kind of suspicion whatsoever. And they talked to visitors that went to the school, parents of the school, children up at the school, teachers and staff up at the school, the Horman home, and nearby Sauvie Island the morning the boy disappeared. Multnomah County Sheriff's Detective FBI agents and up to 4 state investigators are among the task force members who have spent the past 6 months examining at least 60 persons of interest. Again, this article was written a year after Kyron came up missing, and Dan Stanton is talking about at least 60 persons of interest. 60.
Right.
That's not one. That's not hyper-focused on just Terri Horman.
Yeah.
That's not just one. That is 60. 60.
Absolutely. You know,
I was floored to find this.
Yeah,
I think I stood up and did a little happy dance like, what? Like, okay,
Right.
this is definitely something that we need. This is not just one. This is 60. And who else are they investigating now? We don't know. We're not privy to the information.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
we all hear about it being focused on Terri, but they've also mentioned other names and also other people that may have helped her or other people in this investigation. Here they are saying 60 persons of interest. That blows my mind.
That is it's mind-blowing.
A year.
Yep, that is mind-blowing. I mean, imagine as the investigation grew and grew from that point. 1 year is still, honestly, I know it sounds like a long time, but that is not a long time when there's this much information to gather and go through and check off. So imagine that list growing as they continued. I mean, I feel like I've mentioned this before. Believing that law enforcement is doing a thorough job and a thorough investigation is definitely, it requires you to have some blind faith. And I hope that this research that we're showing tonight and all of these reports, their own words, shows you that you can put a little bit of blind faith into Multnomah County. They're doing the best they can, and they have looked as far as they can to find Kyron. And we also know that Kane and Desiree are both privy to the information, the tactics, the evidence that the police have in that war room, and they both say Terry's responsible. So
they do. And the what was I just gonna say? I can't even remember what I was gonna say.
Sorry,
but it does. Sorry, no. It says here too. No suspects have been named in the case that has cost more than $1.4 million. The newspaper said millions of data points still need to be examined. Those points come from all over the cell phone calls picked up by the 11 towers within a certain radius of the school that investigators call Ground Zero during the 6-hour span when the Horman was last seen at the morning science fair and when he was reported missing after he was discovered not on the bus that afternoon. So there you go. 11 towers within the area, and they're looking at those points that come in from cell phone calls.
That's crazy.
So cell phone calls in the area. See, they're not just hyper-focused. They are doing their jobs. I'm just going to keep saying this hyper-focused because those were the exact words that Detective Taber said. That's what made me feel so disheartened for him. That's what you could hear. I don't want to say, I mean, he sounded like he was just kind of hurt that the public would think that. And he wasn't even part of the investigation in the beginning. And he still seemed to be really hurt that the public or that anybody would keep talking about the fact that Multnomah County Sheriff's Office was just super hyper focused in one direction. They never looked anywhere else. They focused on Terry immediately. We're going to give you guys the information of why, because we actually found the information why they went after Terri Horman. Investigators did not know what happened to the boy. They have considered a number of possibilities, including that the child was abducted, a victim of human trafficking, or was, I don't know how to say that word for YouTube, was unalived. The investigation will remain active until the boy is found. There is an arrest or until there's an arrest or there's no further leads, Staton said. We're not going to call the task force we're not going to call this a task force anymore, the sheriff said. If something breaks, then we'll bring everybody back together.
Yep.
And 60 persons of interest the first year. This is a year later. That just blows my mind. It just blows my mind because me and you have, investigated this for a really long time and never, ever heard 60 persons of interest a year later in the Kyron Horman investigation.
And that's what I mean about reading an article when you're in a different headspace, because I feel like we both have read that article before, glazed right over that part like it was unimportant because we were reading it for a different reason.
Right. We're skimming or looking for specific words or something.
Yes, looking for a certain this proves this, or this is what I was looking for. And then that part gets kind of, your brain doesn't latch onto it because that's not what you were looking for. And now it stands out so differently. So, I mean, that is mind-blowing. I've never heard them actually say anything like that. And so, I mean, at least I wasn't aware of it, that I had read that before. It's crazy.
I have never heard of it before. I don't think I've ever heard anybody. I would even have to look on my page to see if it's even been posted or up in the group to see. We're going to go over the money in this investigation and the money that was spent and the money that Dan Staton was able to give back. And then we're going to get into the reasons why Terri Horman ended up being the focus of the investigation. So bear with us through this last article, and then we'll get to some more information. So Sheriff says Kyron Horman search at 300,000, no arrest, and the boy remains missing. Now, don't forget the last article said a year later, $1.4 million had been spent on the search. This was shortly after. Kyron Horman's disappearance has cost Multnomah County about $300,000 so far, with no arrest and no discovery of the 7-year-old since he vanished from Skyline School on June 4th. Multnomah County Sheriff Dan Staton said all but one of the 7 detectives are working on the case with another 14 investigators from other agencies. They are chasing down leads that come from the tip line, as well as clues gleaned from the interviews with community members. I like that. Tips from community members. And I know that I read in some articles that Jason Gates was just pretty much begging people in the area to keep coming forward, keep giving tips, that all tips were important. But as Kyron's disappearance hits the 4-week anniversary, so this was just 4 weeks and it's already at 300,000. And cost amount for the cash-strapped county, Staton could not say whether an arrest or resolution is coming anytime soon, nor how long the office can afford to sustain the effort. Ultimately, if we are unable to find Kyron, this could turn into a cold case. Staton acknowledged in an exclusive interview with the Oregonian, at some point I am going to have to make a final decision that this has gone to move in a different direction. But right now, the way I've got it set up and the way I've been working with the investigation and the FBI and other agencies, we will downscale appropriately based on the ability and the funding sources. As many as 1,200 people assisted in the massive search around the school and the Horman home for Kyron in days following his disappearance. Some areas were searched 4 separate times, said Staton, but they did not find any trace of him. Staton declined to comment on whether investigators believe Kyron left the school in a vehicle or whether they have eliminated any registered S offenders who lived anywhere near the area as suspects, but the sheriff repeated earlier assurances and authorities believe Kyron's disappearance is an isolated event. We have no evidence that this is a serial type of event that's taking place. So again, he's saying that they don't believe that this is just some strange, weird abduction. This is an isolated event. It's not something that's out there repeatedly happening. He's having to tell this to the parents because they're worried that their kids could be taken also. Mm-hmm. Staton said investigators are continuing to chase down leads. Those have included recommendations from neighborhood residents on where to look, as well as suggestions from parents about child behavior based on their own experiences. The investigation hasn't stalled, he said. As it progresses, you need to have enough information to do the things that you should be doing. We've gotten information. We've closed certain avenues that were open up through sources that came in. New potential sources have came in. We're going to continue to investigate. There is nothing that we have received evidence-wise that has indicated to us that we need to change the course of this investigation. So after it's been called a criminal investigation, weeks later, they're saying that there's no need to change this course that they're headed on. There's no reason for it. We will believe that, and we will perceive that Kyron is alive, and we will be able to locate him. Staton said he is working with his finance staff to identify places the staff or sheriff's office can shave cost and free up money to pay the personal food services and other costs connected with the search and investigation. Staton teared up when talking about the emotional toll on searchers and investigators. I don't put a dollar figure on a child. I won't do that. I will employ whatever it is that I have to be able, or that I have available to me to try to locate a child or someone that is vulnerable. And a lot of people came out the county for all the money that was spent. This is where we're going to kind of talk about the Sauvie Island Bridge. because Terri Horman goes on the Dr. Phil show, and she had started rumors way previous to this that, she was seen by the Sauvie Island Bridge camera, or she would have been seen by this camera on the bridge if she would have gone over to Sauvie Island. This started the public going at Multnomah County for continuing to search on Sauvie Island for months and months and months and years and months and years later, still searching on Sauvie Island. They did a search in 2017 again on Sauvie Island. The community is like, what the heck are you doing? If you know Terri Horman wasn't over here, why are you still searching over here? One, that points out they weren't just hyper focused on Terri Horman. Two, the truth is, we've debunked it. There was no camera on the Sauvie Island. That rumor was started by Terri Horman long ago and by Pink on Crime. But they also got picked on for all of the money, taxpayers' money that was used for these searches. And I found an article that talks about how Dan Stanton, the sheriff, was able to pay back. It says in other developments, Thursday, Multnomah County Sheriff Dan Stanton announced before county commissioners that he's giving back nearly $1 million in taxpayers' money. County commissioners signed off on more funding for the case overall, however, by approving District Attorney Michael Schrunk's request for an extra $196,000 for his office investigation into Kyron's disappearance. Stanton said he's been able to shave cost in his department, that he doesn't need any extra money. The move seemed to surprise everyone, including the county commissioners, who were overly pleased to hear the news. By slicing overtime and other expenses 6%, Stanton said he was able to pay for Kyron's search out of his own budget and will be able to return a total of $900,000 back to the county. Huge.
That's huge.
I can't believe that I found this. Dan Stanton, people picked on him so much. I'm not going to say that he was a good sheriff. I'm not going to do that, because there was a lot of stuff that came out later on. Right. But I am going to say, when it came to the budget and all of the Terri supporters that want to talk about how these investigators were collecting all of the extra overtime and they were working all of those hours, they were all just out there making a buck. They weren't really doing their jobs, so on and so on and so on. Like, they were just corrupt,
diddle daddling, twiddling their thumbs with their feet on their desk. No.
For real.
It's just crazy. So and on top of that, they went through and figured out we don't need this extra money. We have it. And they also had a donation fund. The community was donating massively to them too. Like, there was so much, and it just is, that's a great point. I'm glad you pointed that out. It's, after seeing all of the work they've put in, hearing that they put in 60,000 hours in just that short amount of time, there's no way. I mean, they were doing so much to try to find him.
So much. And and it's obvious in just everything that we've talked about that the evidence is there.
Right.
It's verifiable information is out there to prove that Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, and all agencies involved were out there beating feet and doing their damn jobs, doing what they're supposed to do. And these people, you also have to remember, several of these different searchers in this area had kids that went to Skyline Elementary School and surrounding schools in the area.
Yeah.
This hit home for a lot of people.
Yep. So they stood up, like it was every parent's worst nightmare. I've heard a lot of people say that, and that is why they felt so compelled to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's just so much information that I never thought I was ever going to be able to find, that we were ever going to be able to put together to do a live about this.
Right.
And I think everything happens for a reason. I think timing has everything to do with it too. And the timing, I think it was just right. The articles were there. The information was there, and even
this picture right here. I just want to picture. Can we go back to that picture? I've been waiting for it to come up. Just go back one picture, two pictures. It's the one where they're walking into the press conference. Sorry, I've been waiting for it to come up. It's about to come back. The next one. Look at that man with his phone taking a picture. I just want to point out that smartphones were around back then. And
oh yeah,
Terri was more than capable of posting a picture from her cell phone in 2010. Look at that guy. He's got a sideways cell phone taking a picture on his smartphone. That's not a flip phone or anything like that.
Good.
So just
I'm glad you've seen that.
Pointed that out.
I'm going to read what is, let's see. We have, did I only do? No, we have this one too. We're going to kind of share the end where we talk about Terri. I'll go ahead and read the short one, and then I'll let you finish the last one because it's kind of long and now my throat's already hurting.
All right. I'll pick up where you leave off. What is it?
So it's 3 red squares and there's 2 of them, and one is the end of the live. So this one is just, I wrote something out to talk about it with using articles, and initially there was no real interest in Terri Horman as a suspect in Kyron's disappearance. It was indicated that there was a probability of deception during her first polygraphs and gaps in timeline that she gave for the day that Kyron vanished, yet none of the details amounted to anything more than suspicion. Terri Horman said that she was in certain locations, but investigators placed her elsewhere based on her bank card records, cell phone pings, eyewitness accounts, and camera footage. Law enforcement treated this case as a missing persons case for 9 days, and on the 10th day, it was announced that it was a criminal investigation. At the end of June, there was a bombshell dropped. A local landscaper who Terri previously hired showed up to the police station, and he told authorities that about 6 months prior to Kyron's disappearance, Terri offered him money to off Kyron Horman. Jason Gate, well, we can talk about that. I mean, let's talk about that. The information that led them. Terri Horman is telling them where she went that day and what she did. And her story is changing. It's growing. It's lacking. Her credit cards, her cell phone pinged off of an area near Highway 30. That doesn't mean it was on Sauvie Island or right on Highway 30. It was near Highway 30. But now we know there's 11 towers. There's a ton of cell phone information data that they've collected that they've been able to look at. They use surveillance. I'm pretty sure, I couldn't find it. I've seen where they were tracking vehicles that were leaving the Kyron or the Horman property after Kyron disappeared. We know that they were listening in on phone calls and stuff. Terri Horman and Dee Dee Spicer talk about that themselves, about why they got burner phones at the end of June when they stayed with each other for 11 days because they were told by Terry's attorney that they were being listened to in their car, in their home. That's why they're going outside and talking.
Right.
So, burner phones also screams like red flags, and they're buying them.
Totally.
Desiree Young says they had them on June 4th, 2010. I mean, she's missing the same time that Terri Horman is missing, and I'm speaking about Dee Dee Spicer. Law enforcement agencies, Kane and Desiree Young, who were all privy to the information, have all said Terri Horman, Dee Dee Spicer, and possibly other people involved in the disappearance of Kyron. Jason Gates, working full-time, 7 days a week. He said investigation is certainly productive, but that the solution wouldn't fall into our laps. Gates went a step further in placing some blame for lack of more witness tips in the media, because he didn't want to offend the media because residents wanted to cooperate, but they didn't want their property on the news. And he was letting the media know, like, you guys have to stop sharing these people's property so the tips can come in. Gates said investigators have done several searches since the suspicion of official search for the missing second grader. He firmly rebuffed all questions he all questions about Terri Horman, so he wasn't even wanting to talk about Terri Horman, who has not been charged with a crime in the case. And then they had questionnaires, an adult form and a student form. The form said these forms are directed to anyone, teachers, other school employees, delivery persons, parents, etc., who was at Skyline School, either in the school or on the grounds at any time between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. on June 4th, 2010. So parents of children who were present and on campus between these hours but were not themselves present should fill out the page for students. Anyone else who was present should start at the beginning. If you have any questions regarding the completion of this form, send an email to Skyline. Everyone who was at Skyline School on June 4th, 2010, during the times noted above, is being asked to fill out the form and return it. Please fill out the form and return it, even if you have already been interviewed by law enforcement. We are requesting that the form be returned on Sunday, June 20th, between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. at Skyline School. There will be a uniformed police officer in the school parking lot to receive it if it is not necessary to drop it off personally. If it is necessary for you to drop it off personally. If you are unable to deliver the form or have it delivered for you, you may email your responses to the Skyline email. So we're going to talk now about, so these forms are filled out by the adults that were visiting the school, by the children that were visiting the school. So witnesses are starting to come forward, just like Carson and the grandmother that spoke to Kyron as he was leaving the school after 8:45 a.m. in the morning, not early in the morning like Terri Horman would try to have you believe, because she tried controlling the narrative of everything in the beginning. And witnesses like the bus driver, Kyron's bus driver, comes forward and says she sees him, huge witness, huge in this, because she was Kyron's regular bus driver. She knew him. She knew what he looked like. She saw him walking and leaving with Terri Horman. And then there's other witnesses. There's lots of other witnesses. Miss Porter, Kyron's teacher, comes forward and says that Terri Horman not only emailed her, but came to her that day and said, hey, Kyron's not going to be at school for the rest of the day today. He's got a doctor's appointment. Later on, Terri says that that's not what she said. How can she get that wrong? I told her I was going to go look at other science projects. The night that Kyron came up missing, law enforcement got Desiree Young to sign an affidavit to release doctor confidentiality information, HIPAA stuff, so that they could see whether or not Kyron had a doctor's appointment that Friday. He didn't. Then Terri says, well, it wasn't for this Friday. It was next Friday. Well, they checked that, and it wasn't. And Desiree Young still says to this day, there was never a doctor's appointment. It was all a ruse so Kyron could be gone from the school all day long without anybody worrying about where Kyron was. That's why the school didn't make any phone calls. Yeah. Now, Terry's supporters will have you believe, oh, the teachers of the school, the principal of the school, the math teacher, this teacher, that teacher, they must all be involved in Kyron's disappearance. No, they were all investigated. 60 persons of interest a year later, she was not the only person they were looking into. Mm-hmm. They just weren't.
Yep, they just wanted to make dang sure. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's just like, I think, one of the things we read earlier, it's not about getting an indictment. It's about making sure you have the evidence that secures the conviction. And that's the standard they're going by. And they are making dang sure that if they go for that indictment, they're getting the conviction.
Well, yeah, and the bombshell about the landscaper, they pretty much know at that point when this landscaper comes in and starts saying all of this, oh, wow, the person that we've put these flyers out for, oh, maybe we're on to something. Like, hello. And then I just recently found something that was talking about the landscaper. Why, I have seen this news report a dozen times. I've read it and I've also seen the video. And I never heard it before and I've never read it before, but it says that there is no statutes of limitation on murder for hire, in nothing like that whatsoever. And the fact that Desiree and law enforcement have said that they're keeping this murder for hire plot with Kyron's case is why they're doing it. And in 2016 and in 2017, the murder for hire plot that was done on Terri Horman's ex in 1990, he was flown up here, put before the grand jury. He also, what's that called when you talk and you give your deposition?
Yeah.
He did a deposition. He did all of this stuff. So that can also be set aside for Kyron's disappearance.
100%.
And Desiree has talked about how all this information is just being compiled into one huge, gigantic case so that when they go after her, all barrels are locked and loaded and ready to fire. Like everything they can possibly have on her, they'll have on her.
Makes sense. I mean, after so much investigation, I'm sure they have a lot. They allegedly have multiple murder for hire plots against Kane. We only know of one.
Right.
There are allegedly multiple.
Triple. According to Desiree, there are 3.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
Okay. Let me find my place. Am I going to pick up now?
Yes.
Okay. FBI, this is the title of the article before I begin. FBI will dedicate up to 6 agents to help investigate the Kyron Horman disappearance. The FBI will be dedicating up to 6 agents to help with the criminal investigation into the disappearance of Kyron Horman following a recent review of the local task force's nearly 9-month investigation by FBI agents who specialize in child abduction cases. Multnomah County Sheriff Dan Stanton, who is scheduled to update county commissioners this morning, said the multi-agency task force will proceed at least through June without any request for more money. We're not going to back off on the investigation, Stanton said Wednesday. We may not have it solved, and it may not be to the satisfaction of some, but the fact is we're making progress. The investigation, which has cost the sheriff's office $1.42 million, has turned up no physical evidence of the 7-year-old boy who was last seen June 4th at Skyline School. Investigators on the multi-agency Kyron Horman task force have subpoenaed more than 300 set of emails, cellular phone and computer records, and have hired private technical specialists, including a cellular phone engineer from California, to assist in their review. We've collected those items, and now it's going to take time to get through all of it, Stanton said. Agents from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit based in Quantico, Virginia, came to Portland when Kyron was first reported missing, and 2 returned to spend several days with Kyron Horman investigative team in late January and early this month. The agents.
Can we pause for just a second?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to talk about this. More than 300 sets of email. How many times have we talked about Terri clicking her fingers, email to friends, emails that the news have gotten a hold of, and everything else? This is talking about 300 sets of emails.
Yeah, way more than we have ever read. Yeah,
300 sets. We maybe have read. Let's see,
5, 10,
5 to 6, maybe. Yeah, maybe 10. I don't know, but we
don't
damn
think
sure
10
ain't got
either.
300.
No,
but yeah, 300 emails, cellular phone and computer records.
Oh,
so this is saying cellular phones.
Yeah,
and computer records.
Yep, and Terri would like to let people know.
Specialists.
Terri has commented that they didn't look through the electronic devices, and that's really
Well,
that's
there
just
was an
bizarre.
article that was put out that Dee Dee Spicer had her phone, her computers. She had all her digital stuff taken.
Yeah, right. I mean,
So
they
here you go.
also
300 sets of emails, cellular phone and computer records, and have hired private technical specialists, including a cellular phone engineer from California, to assist in their reviews.
Yep. They're going.
But they ain't doing their job.
Yeah, right.
Oh, sorry.
The agents, more commonly known as the FBI's profilers, assist law enforcement agencies in complex cases based on an investigative experience, education, specialized training, and research, according to the FBI's website. They provide investigative suggestions, interview strategies, profiles of unknown offenders, and analysis of leads. The FBI has stepped up their participation, Staten said Wednesday. They've offered up the BAU unit and any assistance. Beth Ann Steele, FBI's spokesperson, said that BAU agents assisting bring an expertise specific to violent crimes and kidnapping. They sit down with investigators and go through the case files page by page, and they try to brainstorm to help bring new ideas. They may say, "You want to try this," or have you looked at this?" she said. They've examined the investigative documents and other evidence accumulated so far. Everything from GPS marks picked up from cell phones to taped interviews of persons of interest to what media outlets have caught on camera.
And there we've got it right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Media outlets, things on camera, GPS marks picked on cell phone. And then up here, I thought it was really crazy that she was talking about to help them brainstorm new ideas. That is not them hyper focusing on Terri Horman. They're asking the behavioral analysis unit from the FBI to help them come up with more ideas. But guess where it's at? It's still focused on Terri.
Well, yeah. And we know that especially in 2017 when Kylie Boshi broke the news that the grand jury was still secretly meeting and it was focused on Terri Horman. And he couldn't get files related to Terri Horman's past because that's why they said that he couldn't get them. They said, "Sorry, you can't get them because the grand jury is currently meeting and we're using it as evidence in the case." And
they also said that the grand jury is an investigative tool. And
Yes.
we've tried pointing this out several times before. The grand jury in this case, yes, they want to put out indictments, but that's not what they're for, right?
Mhm.
In this particular case, they are using the grand jury as a tool to investigate Kyron Horman's disappearance.
Secretly. Yep.
Secretly.
That's why they're doing that. They're trying to keep this so under wraps that they're doing everything so secretly. And the grand jury is a secret body of an investigative tool, like she said. And it can issue subpoenas secretly. It can issue warrants secretly. All these things. And, like Samantha mentioned earlier, there was also a gag order on the media in the early days where they weren't supposed to be taping what was happening outside of these locations because they were trying to keep it so secret. And I have read the court filings. I've said that several times. And there is an excerpt from a judge who is talking to Kyron Horman, who is trying to renew the restraining order against Terri. And Terri's attorney is trying to defend Terri. And the judge asks Kyron, "You said last year when you first got the restraining order that the police told you they have reason to believe Terri is responsible. Is that still the case 1 year later?" And Kyron says, "It's not only the case, but they believe they have more evidence that she is responsible now than they did a year ago." And Terri's attorney says, hey, that's not fair. We're over here talking about this evidence we can't see. how you can't use that evidence as against Terri and this, as a restraining order. And the judge says, with all due respect, Mr. Attorney, yes, you can, because it's not about the attorney, the DA, believing that they have probable cause against her. They need to have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Even the judge is correcting Terri's attorney saying that. So I thought that was
we have a
profound.
judge and an attorney calling her a suspect.
Yep.
And the grand jury also are the ones who told Multnomah County Sheriff's Office that they wanted them to go out, search Sauvie Island again in 2017. Now think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
What evidence did they have to suggest that Sauvie Island was an area that is of concern, where they're literally telling Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, you need to do another search on Sauvie Island, come back and tell us if you find anything. I don't know, if they had like a specific area in mind, but if you think about that 7 years later, they wanted that. What evidence did they have?
Well,
Look how long
2017
they
is
searched on Sauvie Island. They searched Sauvie Island like a fine-tooth comb.
Yep. Well, 2017 is when allegedly Terri had held a knife up to her ex-boyfriend's neck, and she left abruptly, leaving her laptop behind. He told the investigators, and the investigators came and took a copy of her computer. So I wonder if there was anything on there, because their computer experts can get.
I didn't realize that just now. Holy shit!
Right. I mean, they had to have found something, because your digital footprint is so stuck on you. Like, man, especially if they were to look now on someone's digital footprint, it is amazing how far they can discover things about your digital. The way you do your digital movements online, they can look at even your keystrokes, for goodness sakes. Even if you don't write a message, they can just see, oh my gosh, she typed this and then deleted it, but didn't even post it. It's so bizarre.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Yep. So anyways, I'll continue this article. Okay. It's the last article. As a result of the BAU agent's visit, the FBI is dedicated a group of agents from its Portland office to work on running down certain leads or conducting interviews with people who have not been reached. We are providing a core group of investigators to help deal with some specific tasks that were identified by the profilers and the task force, Ms. Steele said. The recently assigned group of federal agents will be working out of the FBI's office initially, Steele said. The federal agency has more than 100 agents throughout the entire state. Kyron's stepmom, Terri Horman, took him to school early June 4th for a science fair. She told investigators she last saw him walking to his classroom at 8:45, but he wasn't reported missing until he failed to arrive home by bus that afternoon. While the inquiry has continued to focus on Terri Horman and several of her close friends or associates, the task force must be careful to run down other potential leads, such as contacting and interviewing all sex offenders living around the Skyline School or Kyron's home.
And there you got it again. They are looking at her. Several of her, continued their focus on Terri Horman, several of her close friends and associates, but the task force must be careful to run down other potential leads, such as contacting and interviewing all SA offenders living around the Skyline School or Kyron's home. So they're looking into more people. Even though they're focused in on Terri, they're still looking at more people. And they have over 100 FBI agents, investigators, in this BAU that are looking into this to give more ideas. 100.
The article continues, anything that we neglect to look into are potentials in a prosecution as something that you can poke a hole through, Staten said. So we can't be remiss in looking at all the leads. They're thinking of this early on. They're thinking of, when we bring this to prosecution to be at a trial, we got to make sure that we have everything to defend whatever they are trying to use as their defense. We've looked into.
Exactly.
Excuse me. Investigators have identified more than 490 people who were at the school June 4th, as well as the 54 vehicles parked on the campus that day, Staton said. To do that, they had to examine photographs taken at the school during the science fair, sometimes checking the license plates of the cars appearing in the background. The actual account of everyone and everything that was on the campus that day, we now know, he said. Since Kyron was reported missing, more than 4,318 investigative leads have been developed. Detectives have completed more than 3,500 interviews and filled 66 4-inch binders. They've contacted 124 RSOs, but the sheriff would not comment on whether they've excluded any as suspects. The structure of the task force will remain with the sheriff's office, continuing to dedicate a sergeant, 2 detectives, and a search and rescue coordinator. Oregon State Police, Portland, Clackamas, and Washington County sheriffs have contributed a detective each. Washington County might have to pull its detective, however, Staton said. Search and rescue volunteers have put in a total of 19,793 hours. I'm disappointed this isn't over with. I'm disappointed we haven't found this young man, Staton said. I don't put the blame on our investigators. Everybody who has been involved in this has worked on this case as diligently as possible. We know more about what potentially did happen than we ever did in the past. The biggest hope is we would have found him. By mid-June, if there's been no arrest, Staton said he will review the task force's progress once again. One thing I can assure you, if this case stagnates and there's nothing more coming in, we'll have to take a different approach. Another article titled Multnomah County Sheriff Dan Staton confident Kyron Horman investigation won't end up in the cold case files. MCSO Sheriff Dan Staton almost despaired of solving the Kyron Horman case in September, fearing the biggest criminal investigation in the county's history was destined for the cold case files. He was anguished at losing those vital 6 hours between the time the 7-year-old boy disappeared from Skyline School on June 4th and when he was reported missing, and the sheriff worried the investigation was bogged down in a flood of information that wasn't shaping into a solution. Room 200A is a bare-bones second-floor conference room at the Sheriff's Administration Office. I think I've read this. This is a continuation of another one.
It is a continuation of a different article. It's going to mention this, but it goes into something else.
Okay, got it.
This article actually is when Dan Staton starts really talking and focusing in why they're focused on Terri Horman.
Ah, got it. Room 200A is a bare-bones second-floor conference room at the Sheriff's Administrative Office in Northeast Portland. An enlarged photo of a smile bespectacled Kyron. See, I knew because that word I stutter on all the time.
Spectacle.
There you go. Thank you. Standing before his school science fair project sits prominently against a whiteboard. Metal shelving holds 63 white binders, each 4 inches thick, filled with thousands of pages of police reports. 2 laptops on a conference table contain the FBI software that sorts the 4,257 tips they've received. Stacks of maps in a room down the hall plot the 155 square miles that has been searched. Investigators suspect more than one person was involved in Kyron's disappearance, and that more than one crime occurred. An alleged murder-for-hire scheme by the boy's stepmother against her husband before the boy went missing, Kyron's kidnapping, and who knows what else. They're still unsure what happened to the child and have had to consider all options, including his being abducted, becoming a victim of human trafficking, or being unalived. Though the sheriff and his investigators won't comment on any suspects, it's clear from court documents that and testimony that in the couple's pending divorce case that Terri Horman remains at the center of the inquiry, as well as a handful of associates and friends of the stepmother, including Dee Dee Spicer. The sheriff is pushing for something to shake loose by February 1st, the end of a 120-day deadline set for the task force, and when he reports to the county commissioners about the status of an investigation that has cost nearly $1.4 million as as of November 29th. The scope is narrowing. My belief is we should be relatively close to something by then. That's why I set the time frame I did, Staton said. While we may not be at an arrest or an indictment phase, we're going to have it narrowed down to a point where we may be calling out a suspect, identifying certain people or things. Yet, prosecutors and task force members aren't about to set any deadlines. This is a marathon, not a sprint, Captain Jason Gates said. They said to one undeniable fact, they lack any physical evidence of Kyron or physical evidence that links anyone to his disappearance. I think about this case constantly, said Sergeant Keith Crav, the task force supervisor who was the night shift sergeant when Kyron was reported missing. Our biggest hurdle, we don't have the kid, alive or unalive, he said. Though cases have been prosecuted before without a body, they're difficult to make, and even more so when it involves a child who leaves no phone, banking, or any other records behind. A grand jury has heard from at least 40 witnesses and continues to meet intermittently. The district attorney's office has an extra prosecutor assigned to the case through June. Barring an unexpected evidentiary development, said Norm Frink, Multnomah County Chief Deputy District Attorney, the investigation is going to continue for months. Kyron disappeared June 4th. His stepmother, Terri Horman, had driven the 7-year-old to school early that morning for a science fair. She told authorities that she last saw him walking down the hall toward his classroom at about 8:45. He never made it. He wasn't reported missing until the afternoon after his father, Kyron Horman, and stepmother discovered he wasn't aboard the school bus. They went to the school to find him, prompting the school secretary to call 911 at 3:46 p.m. Investigators interviewed about 300 students, their parents, and all faculty and staff determined that Kyron was not seen at the school after 8:45 a.m., but the school never called anyone to report his absence.
Can you pause right there?
Yeah.
They interviewed 300 students, their parents. So that's 600. 600. 300 kids, 300 parents, 600, and all faculty and staff. So there you go, 100 or 200. That's almost 800 people. Just, you know.
And each one of these,
that Kyron was not seen at the school after 8:45
because
a.m.
every person has their own. They have their own timeline. They know that they stack them against each other to find out exactly who saw Kyron last, and that's why they came forward and said Terri is the one. She is confirmed the one. After talking to all these people, laying out their statements against each other, making, okay, if this person said this, then this person said this. We have to find out who, like, you know, oh, I didn't leave until I got this phone call. Oh, they got the phone call at this time. Well, they can check and see. Well, then I know that this person saw Kyron and Terri leaving at this time.
Because they're using these people's cell phone records and stuff too. Right. Oh, I know because I got a phone call. Oh, okay. Well, we'll check it out. We're checking out your cell phone. Oh, you're right. Okay. So we know you know where you were at this time. This is where you were. Because they're looking into all of this. And then you have the witnesses saying that they saw him leaving between 8:45 and 8:50 in the morning. When did Terri Horman say she left the school? Between 8:45 and 8:50 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Conveniently, all of these, or I shouldn't say all, so many of these patrons to the science fair were taking time-stamped photos. The police have so much time-stamped evidence at their disposal here, and not every single picture would have Kyron in it, but it would establish a timeline of these people's witness accounts. I was in this room, I think,
and
at this time.
What they were doing, because everybody was a suspect.
Yes. Oh,
everybody
let me see this picture.
Everybody was looking at everybody.
Yes.
You know, they only honed in on her because of the evidence that they had.
It's like a huge puzzle. And, you know, maybe there were certain people in the back of other people's photos, right? And they were identifying every person in every photo. And they were even to the point where they were identifying every single car to if they could see their license plate or not in photos.
Right.
So, I mean, they were really checking every single box to make sure. And this feels really good to talk about because I feel so much more confident.
Yes. As we're going through this, as we're reading it, as me and you are sitting here talking and just like, I'm listening to you read articles, you're listening to me read articles. We are able to put this together a little bit better, I feel, on how the actual evidence was created in this case. How they were able to determine why she was a suspect, why they knew when Kyron actually left the school. They have their hands on all of this evidence. Yeah, and like he said, like Detective Taber told me on the phone this last week, we know a tenth of it. The information that we're finding is less than a tenth of the tens and thousands of files.
What is out
tens
there?
Of thousands. I won't tell you guys the very specific file count that he gave me, but it's over 40,000. Okay.
Oof.
It's over 40,000 files.
Crazy to
It's
imagine.
insane.
Wrap your head around that. All right, I'll continue.
I can read some unless you're good.
Yeah, I can. I think I only have a little bit more.
Okay.
Maybe a couple more scrolls. That 6-hour window, a lot was lost, Statton said. That's still frustrating to me because I think that's one of the things that really hurt. Those 6 hours. I wish we could regain those 6 hours. By September, the sheriff became worried that the direction of the investigation. The sheriff became worried about the direction of the investigation as the costs mounted. I wanted to know what's going on because I lost confidence in the investigation, he said. I felt the case was moving towards a cold case, and I was concerned. We had collected a ton of information, and nothing was being answered. He called a special meeting of the lead investigators who shared what they knew. His confidence was bolstered. There was an investigative plan. A slew of cell phone tower records were being sought, and computer records and thousands of emails were to be analyzed. Yep.
We went from 300 emails to thousands of emails. What?
Yeah. Probably every single email that she ever wrote.
Yeah. Oh my God. And the other article, it only mentioned 300. And here we've got thousands of emails.
And they're probably sorting through all the emails of the teachers too. I mean, like everybody had to be looked at. I mean, they were probably
and maybe that's why, because there's this thing going around. And I know that it's true because I've read the article that law enforcement never asked the school to keep their records. And that their records were eventually erased from, the school's computers or whatever. When you're reading this and you're seeing thousands of emails and you're seeing all of this information, I'm pretty sure that the reason why they didn't ask them to keep that information in their computers is because they took it. And saved it.
Well, guess what? I mean, how many times have we all told that nothing's ever deleted forever? You can retrieve anything off of a hard drive of a computer with an expert.
Especially a hard drive on a school computer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that might have been reported, but I don't doubt, like you said, that they have a copy. They're not worried about it, or they somehow retrieved it, but it just never got reported because we're not privy to that kind of stuff. I mean, we're lucky to even get this much information early on. They have been tight-lipped for years. They have been really tight-lipped. So
this is crazy. Thousands of emails. I'm sitting over here just like, wow.
Yeah, that is crazy. Persons of interest. Okay, let me start that thing over. A slew of cell phone tower records were being sought. Computer records and thousands of emails were to be analyzed. But persons of interest had emerged whose alibis about where they were during the 6 crucial hours before Kyron was reported missing didn't stack up. The stepmother failed 2 polygraphs and walked out on a third, exams administered by different law enforcement agencies.
Can I pause again? But persons of interest had emerged whose alibis about where they were during the 6 crucial hours before Kyron was reported missing didn't stack up. There again, they had some kind of evidence to prove that this person's whereabouts, I'm assuming they're talking about Terri Horman, alibis or Dee Dee's, because her alibis didn't add up either, because she was missing during the same amount of time as Terri Horman.
Yeah.
Which was Terri Horman's friend, in case anybody didn't know, before Kyron was reported missing. Because, 6 hours has gone by. Like, the first 45 minutes is crucial in a child's disappearance. But 6 hours? I'm sorry, I heard that again, and it was just like, here they are saying alibis didn't add up.
Yeah. You're right.
And if she was where she was supposed to be, that means her cell phone, her credit cards, footage that they were able to collect were not coinciding with her alibis. And we already know that the Michael's store that she said she went to, there was no footage of her there. There were no employees to say that she was there. The Albertsons that she said she went to, she never went there. They got footage. Here these law enforcement officers are on a wild goose chase going to get footage from all of these places where she said she was, because her story's not adding up. And now they got to spend their friggin' time trying to create her timeline for her, because she can't tell the truth. But she'll tell you she had nothing to do with Kyron Horman's disappearance. Well, why can't you remember where you were, what you were doing, where you were driving? Why are you lying about where you were and what you were doing and where you were driving?
Yeah, exactly. In October, the investigation, which at one time involved more than 42 law enforcement agencies and search and rescue groups, switched to a 9-member multi-agency task force. The sheriff's office got an extra $209,000 to cover overtime. An investigative technician, former sheriff's records employee Janet Haley, who records all the tips that come in, disseminates them to task force members, inputs leads into the FBI's Rapid Start computer network, and scans and files all case reports. The 63 case binders hold a profile of Kyron and his family relationships, the names of all who had access or potential contact with him, interviews with more than 1,000 witnesses, and detailed diagrams of Skyline School, dubbed Ground Zero. The task force continues to sort leads, identify persons of interest, and track Terri Horman's emails and phone calls before, after, and since Kyron went missing. And it has enlisted the help of the Oregon Department of Justice to analyze cell phone tower records and a regional lab to review computer files of potential suspects. They must look at all potential theories. They suspect Kyron's stepmother's involvement, but did she pass the boy off to someone? Could the boy have been taken along the I-5 corridor and out of the country? They also must identify and interview child predators and RSOs living in the area.
That was one of the best articles I found, by the way. I'm just saying.
That had a lot of information
in it that I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on my back. I'm just sitting here in awe of what this article has in it.
It really,
wow.
It is a lot. And you should pat yourself on the back because, like,
okay,
you know,
I will. Pat, no.
We talked about this, we haven't talked about it in depth in the live tonight, but we were going to go live with this last week. I think it was, or maybe early this week, but then we had a technical glitch, and it was kind of it was divine intervention, honestly, because Samantha continued to research and found way better stuff to talk about. So it was
I messaged you, and I'm like, listen, everything happens for a reason, because I found out the stuff about the green Hornet that was the search and rescue and a few other things. Again, I'm not trying to pat myself. I'm just saying it really didn't feel like it was the right time. I feel like we didn't have enough information. I wanted enough information to really give everybody the perspective needed to show everyone that law enforcement looked into this case. Multnomah County Sheriff's Office did everything they can, and all agencies involved in the search and rescue and the people involved. I mean, if you sit there and you read that, and how many times you just read cell phone towers and computers, okay? And just the last few paragraphs, as time goes on and technical things become more savvy and get better and better and better, it's inevitable. It is friggin' inevitable that Terri Horman will go down
Yeah.
for the person who took Kyron, and Lord knows what happened to him after that. But all of the information that they have, information like this only gets better and better with time, you know?
Yeah.
They're going to be able to find it. Forensics, you don't mess around with forensic science. And it really sounds like they have a lot of forensic science evidence in this case. So yeah, as time goes on, it really is inevitable that she will go down for this. I really do believe it in my heart that she is a person of interest and a suspect. I mean, my own opinion. I mean, yes, a judge has called her that. Yes, an attorney has called her that. I am just saying there's a lot of reasons why she would be called that. And to think that we only know less than 1/10 of the information that they actually have. And this is the conclusion that we're concluding. This is how we feel about it. This
Our
is who
critical,
we think is
logical thinking.
responsible. Yeah, and we don't even know all of it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
There's just, like we say, there's just too many suspicious coincidences. Terri's own behavior, her lack of willingness to clear herself fully. I mean, if she was innocent, her innocence would prove her innocence. But she ran away and she abandoned her daughter, and she's done nothing to help. She's only tried to deflect. In fact, somebody today on one of our posts made a mention saying, but JC Dugard's stepfather was blamed and he was innocent. And I said, I sympathize with him. But do you want to know the difference between JC Dugard's stepfather and Terri Horman? JC Dugard's father is over here saying, I don't blame them. They were looking at me because I was the last person to see them. They were just doing their job. Terri Horman will never say that. She'll blame every other person and every other reason before taking an ounce of responsibility for what happened to Kyron that day. She'll never do the right thing. But I do agree with you that the truth and goodness, they prevail. And that's why we're here, because we're never going to let people forget. If she's going to get away with it out of the court of law, well, guess what? We're going to remind everybody that, hey, Terri Horman's still out there, and she is definitely, I'm going to say it, I don't care who's going to be mad at me, she's a suspect in Kyron's case. She might not have been publicly identified as one, but she's definitely a suspect. They don't have to identify her. There's no law requiring them to. But guess what? She's the only witness that was literally the last person who saw Kyron that day who has never testified to the grand jury. Yeah. And why would that be? Because she's the suspect, the one they're investigating. So
yes. And let's talk about that. In Oregon, most of the time they do not call a person of interest or a suspect until the handcuffs go on them. They don't. Yeah. They are trying to avoid extra money that can come out of their pocket later on for lawsuits, because Lord help Oregon when it comes to needing money and funds to do the things that they need to do in the court systems. They're overloaded and they are lacking so much money in all of the different counties and stuff. It's actually really sad. But then you also would talk about Terri Horman. You had Jason Gates talking in the earlier video that we showed where he said 28 days into the investigation, she lawyered up and shut up. Yeah. She's completely stopped cooperating, hasn't cooperated since. She gave up all rights to her daughter, so she didn't have to talk about Kyron Horman in the custody battle for her daughter. She had certain things she needed to do. If she would have done those things, she would have been able to see her child. She gave up those things because she didn't want to talk about Kyron. Well, why doesn't she want to talk about Kyron? Why hasn't she never put her feet on the ground to go on one search? Why is she out there putting up flyers with the wrong information, with the wrong tip line information, or putting up flyers with a man's face on it talking about that there is a man involved in his disappearance? Why is she trying to control this narrative that somebody from the school kidnapped him? Oh, and let me talk about something else that was really frustrating for Detective Taber. He said that all the time, email, phone calls, tip line, whatever, constantly calling and talking to somebody about the 7-Eleven store that Terri Horman mentions, where there was a guy in a white van and he pulled up to the 7-Eleven store and he was asking about the nearest school. The most frustrating thing in the world, he said, was somebody bringing up the 7-Eleven, because the guy, Terri Horman, wants you to believe that this guy was at this 7-Eleven the day that Kyron came up missing, or maybe it's the day before or something like that. No, it was months before. Detective Taber has told me this multiple times, and it's very frustrating for him because of the rumors, because of her trying, and he's not even mentioning or talking about Terri at all. He's just saying it was frustrating for him that people want to, talk about the 7-Eleven store all the time. Well, that's because it was months prior to Kyron's disappearance, he said.
Yeah, it's just
He
another of Terry's deflections.
Yes, he's never mentioned, Terri mentioned it on the Dr. Phil, or when Terri says,
yes.
But he just mentioned 7-Eleven and the fact that happened months prior to his disappearance, which actually I got a video of that 7-Eleven. I got a new video of Newberry Road, a new search area, several different Forest Park videos. Super excited to have another live on Kyron to show these things. I am so glad we did this live.
Yeah,
I actually have a whole new perspective. I wanted to show everyone else a new perspective, but I learned from this live.
Ton. Me too. This is a great topic. And you came across some wonderful information. Like I said before, it really does just strengthen that blind faith that I know that the investigators have done everything they can for Kyron. The only thing is that when Terri did this to him, she made sure as best she could that he would never be found. And, lack of finding him, they've done everything else they can to try to get him home back to his family. So that blind faith for me is restored. And I think this is a great topic.
We've talked about whether or not he could have been put in the water, whether or not he's been buried in the woods. And I caught myself here recently speculating again about the waters, and I've never done that before. I've always thought, if he was gone in a horrible way, that it was somewhere buried somewhere, right? And then the speculation, thinking about the water and everything else. And then it all started from the video that I did when I came down Newberry Road, and I ended up on Highway 30, and I look over to the left, and it's less than an eighth of a mile. I saw the Sauvie Island Bridge, and I was like, wow, she was seen on Newberry Road by a witness. She drove all the way. She's admitted to being on Highway 30. So was that the way she got down there? Sauvie Island Bridge is right there. There was no camera.
Right.
Grand jury wants them to go search Sauvie Island again in 2017. And I just caught myself thinking about the water and stuff all over again. And the fact that many people have said, if you put a person in the water there, they're just going to go out to sea. And we know that the currents in these rivers up here in the Pacific Northwest are just immensely strong. So strong.
Yeah, right.
That what they would do.
That river is massive. It's easily bigger than a 8-lane freeway. Like, it's huge.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's a massive, wide river that would run straight to the ocean. And they weren't searching that area right off the bat. They were staying within that 2-mile radius around Kyron's school and around Kyron's home. So who knows? I know I've definitely considered that. And that's the frustrating thing about thinking about if he isn't with us any longer. If whoever did
it's hard
this.
to talk about. It's so hard to talk about. You never know if a parent of a missing child is going to be listening to anything that we do. So it's really hard to say and speculate about. But I mean, it's been 13, 14 years later. The investigators saying that it's a local investigation. They're not looking at trafficking at all, really, unless there was a good tip that had came in. I don't think they're following that lead at all. There's been no good tips leading them in that direction so far. No money trail, no nothing. So when you just think about how local they're saying that it is, it's local, and it's for almost 14 years later. So yeah. What do you
exactly.
think?
You always have to have this glimmer of hope,
women.
but yeah.
Yeah, and you've got two women that know that entire area so well. You've got a friggin' rainforest and God knows how many rivers, the I-5 corridor. I mean, when you talk about how many miles that they've covered and searched, 155 miles out, that's insane. That's all the way to the coastline. That's way up here north in Washington, way down south in Oregon, way east of down I-84.
It's
That's
probably
insane.
doubled since then too, because that was in 2011. I mean, at least doubled. It's been 14 years. I know searches slow down, but between the private and the official searches, yeah, I think it's safe to assume that hundreds of acres have been searched, if not maybe even approaching 1,000. They've never given up.
Right. All right, everybody. So just to go over it, Kyron Horman came at missing June 4th, 2010. The last known person to see Kyron was Terri Horman Vasquez. That was Kyron's stepmother. She was the one who took him to Skyline Elementary School on June 4th, 2010 to a science fair. They went around looking at science fair projects alone, just her and the baby, Kyron's baby sister, and Kyron walking around the school, looking at stuff. She took the picture of Kyron standing next to his science fair project, and witnesses say that they saw Kyron leave with his stepmother that day between 8:45 a.m. in the morning and 8:50. If you have any information at all, please call the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office tip line. The telephone number is 503. I have to wait for it to come by because it's been a long time. 988-0560. You know, you could have seen anything that day in that area. Lots of roads have been talked about. Terri Horman went to the Walker Road and the Embry Drive. Fred Myers. She went to the cleaners that was over by the Walker Road, Fred Myers. She went to the gym, the 24-hour fitness, which is also off of Walker Road. She traveled a lot of the area over there in Portland, Oregon, Logie Road, Dixie Mountain, Rocky Point Road, Highway 30, Savia Island, Newberry Road, Old Germantown Road, Skyline Boulevard, Springville Road, any areas in Forest Park. These are all places that they have been wanting to know about. I'm sure I'm missing a few roads, but you know, someone could have witnessed her picking up and dropping off. Someone could have just witnessed two people sitting there talking in their vehicles or pulled over to the side of the road in a really strange area or anything. We're talking 13, 14 years later, they need tips. And remember, there is a $50,000 reward for any information leading to where Kyron is. $50,000. It's been that way for a long time. Kyron needs to be found. Kyron needs justice. His family needs prayers and continued support. We don't bash the parents. The parents have nothing to do with it. The stepfather, Desiree Young's husband, Tony, he doesn't have any involvement. They've all pretty much been cleared. Yeah, and that's pretty much the facts, you guys. We've got a person that's responsible for a child missing, and they deflect and they try to control everything. And we're just trying to help find Kyron Horman. So again, if you have any information whatsoever about Kyron's whereabouts or any information leading police officers to a good tip, even if it doesn't have anything to do with Kyron or Terri Horman, 503-988-0560. We love you guys. We're glad to see everybody here. We will always continue to search and fight for Kyron Horman. And kudos to all law enforcement agencies, and especially Multnomah County Sheriff's Office for all of the hard work in Kyron Horman's investigation and
Amen.
search.
That's so true. Thank you to all the hardworking law enforcement agencies and anybody, volunteer, anybody who has contributed help to Kyron's case. Thanks for being here. On your way out, if you haven't yet, don't forget to push the like button and subscribe if you're not, and consider sharing this to spread awareness for Kyron if you feel so inclined. And I hope you all have a great rest of your night.
Yep. And grab a flyer of Kyron's and share that on social media. Social media is the biggest platform that we have to share Kyron. He's not getting shared enough, and we would really appreciate anybody sharing his face on a flyer, his face. Tell a story, tell your friends, invite them to groups, invite them to lives, invite people so that we can keep spreading the word. God bless Kyron and his family. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, Kaylee, for always being here and being my partner. I love our teamwork.
Absolutely. Thank you as well.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.